Let's see. Let's see, let's see, let's see. Is everything working? I thought you were going to stream Angry Goy. What's that? So one of the main reasons why I wanted to watch this again was I think somebody recommended in the Telegram there was like a Richard Spencer debate with him with some guy called Mr. Girl, which gave me kind of like red flag vibes. So I skimmed a little bit of that, then this became recommended again. And I just thought it'd be good to kind of watch this again. And I had no idea what to really stream. I've not been feeling that great. So we can casually just skim this. And this is probably the best we're going to get as a video of a sort of arc of Sargon of Akkad. Like I've been debating about doing a video about how Sargon, he's been on the scene since like 2012, 2013. And it'd be kind of nice to see how he's changed. But it's quite difficult to find all these like archived videos. He's deleted a lot of the videos he's done already, like back in the day. So it's kind of hard to kind of piece all that together. So instead, this is probably the best as we're going to get as like a looking back on Sargon. Because I do like Sargon. I mean, honestly, I do like Sargon of Akkad. I've always kind of like kept an eye on him. I liked him back in the Gamergate days. I liked him during the kind of like initial social justice warrior stuff. And even when he cemented in the sort of classical liberal kind of like cringe and retarded sphere, I still liked and respected him, just didn't really listen to him very much. But now he's almost came around full circle. And again, I still like and watch Sargon. So this is a nice kind of looking back on Sargon of Akkad. Additionally, I don't know that much about Richard Spencer. I've only really seen him in lots of debates like this. He did that series with Jonathan Bowden when he was like on the phone with him. And from what I've seen of Spencer, he always seems to come across as, he always just seems to be really funny, he's smart, and he knows what he's talking about. But I don't know that much lore. There's a lot of deep lore about Spencer that I just don't know much about. So if anyone wants to lore dump, because there's a lot of people who do not like him. So I'm quite interested to know why that might be, apart from the fact of him being a bit of a dickhead. But that's kind of why I like him. You know, he has this sort of smug, elitist attitude that is just so funny. So let's just start, because this is a really long video.
It's going to be just 4 minutes, but we decided to start so we're not too late. Today is probably one of the most controversial episodes we've had, because seeing how everyone's reacting on Twitter. So this will be very interesting. I got me obviously moderating with JF helping me. What's up, JF?
Hello.
How you doing, man?
I'm worried for you, Andy.
Why is that?
Also, the deep lore about JR. I don't know much about JR. I know Murdoch made fun of him quite a lot. I've only kind of ever seen him on a stream like this before, but I know there's like deep lore about him and his estranged wife. So I don't know anything about that. So I don't have much of an opinion, but I know that's a bit of a contentious issue.
All these intellectuals, Andy, on the show.
This is before the wife went missing. I see.
I remember a time where this show was a stepping stone between a trash can and the Drunken Peasants podcast.
Yeah. A lot of people on Twitter had some opinions. We got.
Also, is this the one where Sargon drops the N-word? He like calls Spencer. He's acting like a bunch of N-words. Does anyone know the timestamp of that? Because we need to skip over that. We can't, even though this has been on YouTube for years, I don't think we can get away with playing that live.
Richard Spencer, what's up, man?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it. We got Styx here as well. What's up, Styx?
Grand Nazi gatekeeper tuning in.
Styx and Hammer, he's someone I never really paid much attention to either. Sort of a libertarian, atheistic, occult sort of guy. That's the kind of vibe I get from him. right?
There it is. And then Sargon will be representing the liberal side of things.
Nazis.
Yeah, pretty much. If you haven't seen on Twitter, there are a lot of memes of me now, on Nazis and stuff. After it's pretty funny. I was fucking laughing. I'm not gonna lie. So why people are obviously talking about this show is a lot of people who I associated with are really pissed at me for having you on, Richard. I'm sure you've seen a lot of people complain at certain people who've had you on their shows, no?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There were some people who gave me a fair shake, and then they were
The Amazing Atheist, that's not a name I've heard for a very, very long time. Is he still alive?
viciously attacked by their colleagues and former friends for even allowing me on their program and even just having a conversation with me. I think maybe they would allow me to be on if it were just a vitriolic attack and name calling and screaming and so on. Maybe that would have been acceptable. But to have me on for a conversation is verboten.
Actually, a lot of people were. I had tweeted out that you'd be on the show, and I tweeted that I'm looking for someone who has a.
Let's enough with the end columns. That's the. Can we please stop that? That's not a good look.
Opposing viewpoints, and this actually sparked an outrage on certain YouTubers who were mad. Like, wait, so you don't oppose him? And I'm like, I'm not saying that. I'm just not qualified, I think, to talk about certain subjects. And I want people who can
soiling.
And first of all, I want to say.
I'm the one with the YouTube channel. I'm the one that needs to curtail what I say to appease the... Who's in charge of YouTube now? Whoever that is, I need to appease them. I need to bow my head for them every single day.
Real fast, this is not a debate. We're all going to be talking...
Let's just skip it a bit. Let's get into the meat of this. Spencer. Where does Sargon... Oh, there you go. Sargon's arrived. Let's kick things off now.
Seriously inquired into what America is as a European nation and who they are as Europeans. And I think we've basically seen the end result of this, which is a conservative movement that just slowly floated leftward, that was based in abstract values like free market capitalism, which could be used to justify things like the Iraq War or what have you, that it was just this free-floating ideology that floated leftward, that floated this way and that floated over to Iraq in some cases, and just became a total disaster and didn't conserve anything. A conservative has to conserve something. A conservative is ultimately a collectivist in that sense.
Yeah, I've heard people on YouTube streams, you can say the F word a lot. But I plan to I want to keep the stream so I can at least have them not unlisted so people can easily find them again. So I want to keep it at least, YouTube friendly. But we don't need to be espousing any of that stuff. We all know, we don't need to be edgelords. We're all in good company here. We don't need to impress anyone.
Conservative, someone who is conserving his class, his people, the state itself. He is an institutionalist in that sense. It's actually the left that is individualistic. Even when the left attempts to use collectivist economic means, it's still in the name of individualism. It's still in an attempt to reach a deracinated, pure individual who's not weighed down in the leftist mind by community, by history, by race, religion, the past, the one's duty to the future, etc. So the left is fundamentally individualist. This is the problem with American conservatives. They get this fundamentally wrong. We're individualists. The ISI is a stupid fuddy-duddy group for closeted homosexual Catholics or conservatives, I guess.
I think it's a great point by Spencer that still people do not understand today. The whole idea that the left is all collectivism and collectivism is therefore bad because it's the left. But the left requires the atomization of people to displace them, just to make them autonomous nobodies, just to make them numbers. So people still don't quite see that.
and it used to be called the International or the Individualist Society Institute or something, some nonsense like that. Society of Individualists. They always wanted to base their belief system in the individual and individualism. That is fundamentally wrong. Man is, as a political animal, man is a social being. He's part of a greater family. He's part of a past and a future. He is part of an identity that is bigger than any individual. And so the starting point for the alt-right is that question: who are we? Who am I? Identity.
So that's very interesting, this interaction between individualism and the left and the opposition that you proposed there. I remember Sargon of Akkad being surprised at me, stating that I was not so much of I'm a libertarian, but I'm not so much of an individualist, because I recognize that individuals can adhere to groups. They can use their liberty to adhere to groups.
Oh yeah, just for people who are maybe, let's just maybe show a bit quick clip of this. You know, this is what we have to look forward to. This is the general theme of this debate.
The central question is whether whites have the right to organize for their own group interests or not.
That's preposterous! Have you even read Locke? Oh my god, I can't even! Have you even read Thomas Paine? Jesus Christ, do you even have authorities to appeal to? Sargon, I think your problem is you're full of shit.
So that's what we have to look forward to.
Groups, and then the group can become a very important aspect of their identity. Would you define as a libertarian, and do you see, just like me, that there's no transgression there between being a libertarian and not being an individualist?
Is that for me or Sargon?
Yeah, for you, Richard, and then I'd love to hear Sargon about this.
Sure, I'm not a libertarian. I think a lot of libertarian energies in the United States were masked conservatism. So many people who claim to be a libertarian simply wanted to get the welfare state off their back, thought that the welfare state was pro-black or anti-traditional values, and maybe they were right about that. And so they were anti-government more than they were truly libertarian. And their idea was that we would get rid of the state and then these communities would flourish. This is a kind of right-wing libertarianism. You could see this in a lot of the people who got behind Ron Paul and people in the Mises Institute or so on. There is a left-wing libertarianism which does not really come from that basis, that thinks that the individual is sacrosanct, that we need to, ever expand what individuality means. But no, I am not a libertarian in the sense that, though I oppose many actions of the government, I think the state is an existential entity. There will always be a state. One entity will be sovereign. One entity will be able to use violence. And the question really is what and who? Who is in charge of this existential entity, the state?
Yeah, I think that's the long and the short of it, where a lot of people who still fall within a libertarian lens forget to see that they don't think the government should have the ability to use force. But in reality, someone has to use force. It may as well be a strong government, and one that that aligns with our values. I mean, it's one thing to say you hate the left-wing authoritarianism. What if it's right-wing authoritarianism? Then it's maybe not so bad. What's my opinions on Asmongold? I've always liked Asmongold. I'm a Warcraft guy, and these days he's becoming he's becoming more and more political as the days go by.
And so I am not a libertarian in that sense, although, maybe in a basic sense I'm a libertarian, less government or whatever, but not in a crucial and fundamental sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us think the government is way too big, but it's not to say you want a government that is just inherently small. The government should be the size that it needs to be. And if you are a huge, like the United States, the government needs to be quite large in a country that size. But even then, it's still too big now. It can be reduced, but you don't just need to argue it needs to be tiny. It just needs to be as big as it needs to be.
Excellent. I think we should do intros for Stick and Sargon as well. Sticks, do you want to do an intro for yourself, maybe your political views, so we know where everyone's standing on this right now?
Yes, as far as the most crucial issues that are being spoken of today, essentially, I would consider myself to be basically a libertarian, which is to say, I see the world slightly in the same sense I think that Richard Spencer does on one token, and I've spoken of this. And that's that I think everyone at this point, unless they're really part of the totally mind-numbed establishment, they realize that there are problems in the world and that the sort of answers that have been given to us by the so-called conservatives and liberals of maybe the sort of dynastic systems of the last half century, that they don't work. I think, though, that we're seeing different answers being given by different groups to what those problems are, different sort of threats being actually mentioned as mainly responsible. For someone like Spencer, it's the degradation of maybe the white and or nuclear family, the tribal side of it, I would say too, or at least that's my understanding. For the libertarian, it's the growth of government, not just government, but also bad government, specifically abusive government. The far left, they have their own beliefs too. They see it as maybe the corporations or specifically the so-called right-wing portion of the government. In that sense, I believe that most of the problems that are identified by all of these groups, the one fundamental overarching concept is that people are being abused. That is the fundamental problem. I then simply look and I say, well, what group primarily is responsible? Don't look at the symptoms, like Spencer would say. And this is where we would have a divergence of opinion. He would say, well, it's these other groups of people are essentially causing the endangerment of a white ethno-state or a white group of people.
Yeah, remember during this time, this like whole ethno-state debate was just like, it was just people just love to talk about this, the ethno-state. They love to talk about the idea. This like magical like island that just grew out the ground. Or are we going to balkanize the United States? How are we going to accomplish it? What's it going to be like? People just loved it. Even if they hated it, they loved talking about it.
Because they enable wedge issues or they're not part of that same, cultural background. I would say, though, I go a level beyond that and say, fundamentally, that never would have become a problem, nor would there be any other specific problems with many of the nations of today if you didn't have a government that had become, over time, it had become cancerous, it grows larger, less efficient, more able to abuse, because people, at first, they take a little bit of abuse, and they say, okay, well, it's only a little bit. And then it boils the frog, pardon the Keck reference maybe. Over time, it continues to mount up and up and up, and you get more and more abuse. For people on your Twitter, Andy, I know they were saying, well, Styx can't provide a counterpoint to Spencer. He's not willing to go crazy and start saying, fuck Spencer, Nazi, evil, bigot, horrible person. I look at the culture today, though. I don't identify the alt-right as a particular threat either, because it's never held power. It simply doesn't have the ability to abuse anyone. Like, I'm perfectly willing to question. I will be tonight, I think.
I think what you said there wasn't that smart. If you don't fear an ideology because it's never had power, therefore you shouldn't give it any sort of like credence. I just kind of think about the state of the UK and the rise of radical Islam and how it's taking over councils and things like that, and it's slowly but surely edging itself into more positions of power. You may not have taken it very seriously back in the day, but it's an actual threat now.
Spencer, on how would this idea of yours be implemented? What's your thought on that? And we can have all sorts of disagreements. But I don't feel threatened by the alt-right. I feel threatened by the neocons and the neoliberals who have started every war of the last 100 years, honestly. So in that sense, I'd be libertarian, constitutionalist, classical liberal, libertarian nationalist. You could put any of those labels in there. I don't think there's any single label, though.
Libertarian nationalist. I'm pretty sure in our political ideology tier list we put that on cringe and retarded, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Really encompasses it all. And I don't really like to use categories either. It's like my religious views, pagan or whatever. I kind of shy away from that, because then other people that don't like me will try to transmogrify that label just as they do to everything else. And really, it's really dishonest, but sometimes it sticks. So I try to avoid that.
Perfect. And hey, what's up, Sargon? How you doing, buddy?
Hello. How's everyone today? Sorry, I'm late.
Good. Yeah, man. So you want to give yourself an introduction and what you feel like your political views are, and just
Okay, well, I would just call myself an English liberal. I'm for
Based English liberal.
Enlightenment individualistic liberalism, which
Gay.
I realize that in America that's a contentious term, liberalism.
It's a
But
gay
in,
thing.
in Europe, it actually still means liberalism rather than
Means gay.
progressivism and sort of far left collectivism. But I think most people listening would be pretty familiar with my political philosophy. So I
yeah,
don't
for
think I
sure.
need to go into it too deeply.
Yeah, a lot of
One aspect
people.
that I'd like to hear you on, Sargon, is you're basically rejecting identitarianism, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And that's the crux of it. Listen to Sargon today. He understands now that because we live in a multicultural society, if you don't play identity politics, you lose because everyone else is playing that game. You can have this, this idealist vision of the world, but if it doesn't blend with reality, and everyone else is ganged up against you, he's starting to realize that, or he has realized. Again, we've got to give him a bit of respect for changing his views. He sees the error in his ways. Yo, what's
But
up?
You
I'm
are
actually
English.
really curious about your "I'm a collectivist and an individualist" statement. If I can derail things very quickly,
For sure.
I
go
would
ahead.
love to hear your explanation of that again because I don't remember you telling me that.
I didn't say that. I mean,
No,
I'm
JF, sorry.
You're talking about me? Yeah, well, it was on the interview on my channel. You can go rewatch it. It was...
No, I believe you. I just can't remember offhand.
Yeah, it was libertarianism. I was talking about libertarianism, and you said, "Well, you're a libertarian. You should be individualist." And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm
So I do have reptiles in the tag. No, it's just boxes. No, it's just cabinets of plants. The missus looks after all the plants. I don't know what she's going to do with them when we travel.
a libertarian, but I'm a special type of libertarian. I recognize levels of existence both below the individual, which are the genes that compose us, and above the individuals, which are the groups that we accept to join. And we accept to enter in binding contracts with these groups so that our existence becomes embedded into their existence also.
So you believe in group rights?
No, I don't believe in group rights. I believe
So I'm
that
not in a binding contract with a group then? Because otherwise, if I was in a binding contract with the group would have to have some necessary claim over me.
That's just so funny. That's just so fucking funny. It's the idea, you know, we live in the UK, the white British. We should have our own group rights above everyone else because it's our home. In the same place, in a place like Thailand, you know, you as a foreigner, you can't own a stake in a business or property that's over 51%, I think, because the rights of you do not oversee or they don't overtake the rights of people who live there.
No,
And if
you
it
can be in a
doesn't
binding
happen-
contract that you've consented to. When you enter an organization, this is exactly what you do. When you yeah, go ahead, Richard.
This is so autistic. I mean, look, do you pay taxes? I'm just curious. Do you obey traffic
It's
laws?
the white race, so it's
Do
actually.
you?
not that
I ask a very simple question. Do you pay taxes? Do you obey traffic laws?
Yeah, believe it or not, I do.
Well, but wait. Do you believe in group rights? I mean, this is your. Do you?
How is that group right?
Because you're forced to do that by the state. Did you sign a contract in
But
order
what
to
group
be a
is being
citizen of
given
the
special
UK?
rights?
The United Kingdom, obviously.
Right,
Why is
okay,
that funny?
Okay, so we want to talk about the nation state. Is that what you want to talk about, or do you want to talk about racial identity?
Oh, is the nation state a
Yeah, and that's kind of the crux of things as well. The nation state and racial identitarianism. That's something that is, it's not widespread, but it's becoming a clear thing that people see, that the idea of nationalism. We shouldn't really need to say ethnic nationalism, because a nation is a people. It's just a modern interpretation of a nation, that it's a geographical boundary. But a nation is a people, like the Kurds. The Kurdish people are a nation. They're just a nation within, well, like 3 or 4 other nation states, if that makes sense.
group or not?
Is racial identitarianism something I have no choice over?
Why don't you answer the question I asked
why don't
you?
you answer my question? You
Well, I
Answer my
asked you a question.
question.
You haven't answered it.
Okay,
Obviously, the United
let's
need
get
Kingdom
to
into
both
we
sides.
with Kang's white
that has
people edition,
power
if you want,
over
Richard.
you.
Look, we was Kangs.
If you want to come out
So-
aggressive, we can do that. But I was just happy to have a nice, normal conversation. Can you do that?
Okay. I'll tone down the animosity.
Yeah, let's
So,
let's just
you
try to
obey
summarize.
you obey traffic laws and you pay your taxes. You more or less. I would assume you do. You are effectively obeying a group right. I mean, a corporate entity that is the United Kingdom or some province within it has power over you. So this whole group rights question is, I think, rather autistic in the sense that it's dissociated from lived reality, in the sense that
is
we
some
want to.
massive sophistry there, Richard.
We want to. No, it's not.
No, I have
We
to
wa-
stop you there, right? Okay. So the state is the political entity under which we are governed. Individual people are governed. The purpose
Right,
of the
it's a
state,
group.
in say Britain, as conceived of by Locke, is the protection of the rights of the individual.
As conceived of by Locke, that state was not invented by Locke. That state has a history far greater than Locke. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, this is the kind of why people make fun of this debate so much. Because I think Sargon was so enveloped in the ideals of classical liberalism of John Stuart Mill, David Hume, John Locke, that he had this almost, bigger head mentality that because he understood what classical liberalism is, the most perfect way to rule a society, a homogeneous society that he didn't recognize, that he thought if anyone would just read it, they would just be like, how can I possibly undermine this as conceived by Locke? What Locke conceived can never be questioned. And that's the big failing in this debate, I think, from Sargon.
Ridiculous. Locke wrote this, therefore it's true.
Okay.
This is exactly what I'm saying. You're living in an autistic, dissociated reality where you ask moral questions like, shall a group have a right over an individual? Oh, isn't this so sweet? It's irrelevant
You
because
don't
in
think that's
reality,
important?
groups obviously have rights. The government can arrest me. The government taxes me. The government forces me to do all sorts of things. The United
government isn't a
Kingdom
distinct
prevents me
group,
from
Richard.
entering the country. Obviously, corporate entities have rights. Your family has a certain hold over you. I don't know anything about you personally. What your father says to you has more weight than what a complete stranger, what I might say to you.
And so
Obviously,
I should make moral
groups
arguments?
have
And
rights.
Spencer,
You need to think about these
Spencer.
things
Spencer.
existentially and phenomenologically. That is, in terms of lived reality. You want to play these liberal games of like, well, Locke said the government was this. Well,
Yo,
Jefferson
Spencer,
said that a
Spencer.
government was created to
I'm
protect
sorry
civil
that I
rights.
actually
That
have
is
some consistency in my
irrelevant.
political
Hang on,
ideology here,
that
Richard.
is
totally
You actually
irrelevant.
consider-
Spencer,
Does anyone know what Andy Worski's doing these days? I didn't really know much about Andy Worski. I knew he did the show back in the day. And then I heard nothing of him. And then I saw he was in like some sort of celebrity boxing match and he got knocked out in the first round. Is that really the long and the short of his career? He's trans now. Well, sometimes you gotta clout chase. And sometimes you gotta take it to the utmost extreme.
Lived
Hey,
reality. What John
yo,
Locke wrote
yeah,
is
Richard.
irrelevant to lived reality.
Let's hear Andy,
Sorry,
because
sorry,
this is very
listen.
interesting. We will get back to it. This is very interesting, but let's hear Andy.
I just want to. I want Sargon a fair chance to respond, because
Sure.
yeah.
I would, but someone was busy bloviating, so I think. am I
Ooh,
allowed
that's
to go now, Richard? Is that
Advanced
okay with you?
vocabulary there.
Please go.
I'm
go
obviously quiet.
Oh, thank you, I appreciate that.
But
Okay,
wait a second. No, just
tell me about the lived reality of being a white person. I'm really curious about your conception of white identitarianism.
we can get to that, but do you want to respond to what I just said?
Well, honestly, Richard, I kind of tuned out halfway because you were just going and going and going after conceding.
That's your problem, Sargon.
That, yeah,
You
it
obviously
is entirely
lack the
my
attention
problem.
to follow what I'm saying. I would assume that most of our thousands of listeners actually followed exactly what I said.
I would be
Right,
amazed
can
if
you-
I was trying to respond to you, but you just kept going.
Yeah. Hey Spencer, can you summarize what you asked him?
Sargon is asking these autistic moral questions like, in my abstract realm, does a group have a right over an individual? What I'm saying is those questions are ultimately irrelevant. because in the lived reality, in the world, groups do have rights. You ultimately obey the government of the United Kingdom. So do I obey my government. I ultimately obey your government. Your family has a certain right. It has a certain power over.
Yeah, didn't Sargon claim he's like an octodrone or whatever that is? I don't know. I don't think I've seen his DNA results. I'm skeptical to get one of these DNA things because I don't want like a company to have my exact DNA, which they can use to like weaponize against me, which is a real thing. So I was maybe considering buying my brother a DNA test kit. You know, whatever his results are, my results are going to be exactly the same thing, right? So, and they won't have my DNA, they'll just have his. But I'm pretty sure we'll have the same genetic disparity, right?
Over you that strangers don't. This is lived reality, and we can actually learn much more from thinking phenomenologically and existentially than we can from saying something like, "Well, John Locke said the purpose of government is this." Yippee-ki-yay! It's irrelevant.
Can I jump in?
Let me explain to you exactly what I mean. Right? Okay. So,
all right, then Sticks will also jump in right after.
What you are proposing is a system that necessarily subordinates the individual to the wills of the group, and therefore the individual's rights will always come second to what you have conceived of as group rights. You follow me?
What are we talking? Are you ever going to address
you
what
do
I
not
just
follow
said?
what I'm saying.
I follow what you're saying. You're not addressing what I just put forward because you don't want to talk about that.
Here, but I'm asking you if you follow what I've just said there. Do you follow it? Yes or no?
I more or less follow this kind of cartoon version of what you think I believe. Yes.
It's not what you believe, it's what I believe.
Sargon, it does seem that you are adding stuff that Richard has not stated here. It does seem that
I'm not stating Richard's
you are
position.
assuming
I'm stating what I think happens in reality that Richard seems to be conveniently ignoring.
Well, it's not the case that because you are part of a group and you would think of that group, for example, if you're part of a corporation, you can recognize that this corporation has rights. It could be represented in courts, for example.
Yeah,
that wouldn't mean that the corporation would subordinate all of the individuals composing it. It wouldn't be a subordination necessarily. It could be a voluntary adhesion.
Could be, but it will necessarily, in a number of the cases, be domineering. I mean, for
has
example,
there ever been
shut
a
up
purely
for 5 minutes?
voluntarily?
Hang on. Let Sargon have a chance to respond.
God.
Thanks. Go ahead, Sargon.
A corporation,
and then Sticks will talk right after that.
A corporation does not have the legitimacy to violate an individual's rights because the corporation's rights do not supersede the rights of the individuals that make it up. And we all agree that that's how we should have a government working. Like, that's how society should work. Because if you don't agree with that, then what you're saying is it's okay for a group to violate the rights of other people, like the individual, for its own purposes.
You're not living in... what state are you describing? Because you are not describing the United Kingdom, which goes to war, which arrests people, violates their rights left and right, goes to war.
From a spiritual position. Use logic.
You're talking from a
That's another kind of aspect I think Sargon misses. Richard kind of speaks in these, you know, almost appealing to sort of a divine nature, where Sargon is speaking purely through, I guess, like a material lens, if that makes sense.
abstract liberal position, and I am pointing out how vacuous this ultimately is. You don't describe any state or organization that has ever existed. Has there ever been a purely voluntary political order in world history?
I'm not even talking about things that are purely voluntary. I'm talking...
Sorry,
has there ever been a purely voluntary political order
Sticks.
in world history?
Hey, Sticks, let's hear what Sticks has to say. He's been listening, so go ahead, dude.
Yeah, first I would just point out that it isn't possible to create a fully anarchic order. That would be true. But it is possible to constrain all possible forms of abuse and keep things preferably at a minimum. My question would be this. If we're looking at a civic structure, and Spencer, you pointed this out, and you're right when you point this out, and I would agree. that the government of like the United States, for example, it starts wars and kills people, murders, and does crazy things. If you were to attempt, if you're looking at groups of people as having rights, how would you institute specifically like a white identitarian U.S. or a super state? I think you've mentioned like North America becoming an ethno state. Let's just simplify it, the U.S. How would you implement that without then disabusing large groups of people who are already under the civic structure considered citizens, but happen not to be white? Or how would you disabuse them of that status?
That's a question that is still kind of unanswered. There's no proper... Everyone has their own way of answering that, but there's no mainline answer of how to differentiate that kind of abstract quote-unquote ethno-state. There's no real... It gets a bit messy though, doesn't it?
And push them out physically or sort of make them be lepers within the state without abusing them under that civic structure. And combined with that, how would you then, because you're talking about pragmatism, I take it, when you're talking about living reality, how would you do that without causing so much untold bloodshed? Like one of the things you've spoken of is, hey, I want identitarianism, but it's a kinder, gentler. It's not Hitler. We're not going to purge people. We're trying to make this, easy and I'm not trying to hurt people. How would you do it without hurting people who dissented, including a lot of white people? And some of those people, I've pointed this out, even with regards like MAGA populism. Now, I support deporting criminal illegals, but if you were to try to deport the so-called 30 million people identitarians keep telling me, it would require the suspension of the Constitution. It would cause a civil war. Half of Texas alone would probably take up arms because you'd have to go door to door, suspend the Second Amendment, suspend the right to privacy. How would you actually implement that without becoming so monumentally abusive that the U.S. or whatever ethno-state that was trying to prop up becomes a pariah and gets shut out of by the entire rest of the world, falls into chaos and becomes basically third world? Because then what's the point? It's not a prosperous, white, happy utopia like I guess you envision. It becomes basically a slum. It becomes way worse than it was before in any possible sense of the word.
Okay. Well, first I would say that the ethno-state is an ideal in the sense that the ethno-state, as I have defined it, does not exist right now. There are many states around the world that are ethno-statish, you could say. Poland is a kind of ethno-state. There are plenty of ethno-states in the third world in which you have an ethnic group that has its own government, effectively. And yes, they're citizens, and yes, there's a kind of abstract democratic element to it, but there's also a spiritual and racial element to the composition of the state. So that kind of ethno-state is actually not terribly unusual. We have plenty of existing examples. Israel might be the most famous. Israel actually is a kind of model for an ethno-state that I would want for the white race in the future, in the sense that a Jew from around the world, even one that doesn't have any direct connection with the state of Israel, has a right of return to Israel. He has a home. And my concept, and it's not just mine, there are many.
I mean, it's kind of hard to disagree in a way. I mean, is that the way forward? Do we need to kind of copy-paste what the Israelis do? Which would be kind of ironic in many, many ways, but it's what they have enshrined in their, I guess what they call their constitution, does ensure their prevalence to be the ones to inherit the land forever, for as long as Israel exists.
Many predecessors to me in terms of thinking about this. In terms of the concept of the ethno-state, there would be a right of return for all whites. So it would have a civic order, but it would also, citizenship would be ultimately racially defined. I will go into all the things. I will go into all of this, I promise.
I would just have to remark, though, that couldn't that be problematic? Because one thing that we see in Israel is they have a problem with like white nationalists who have a Jewish grandparent going there and Nazifying things. That's actually been something.
What the fuck is Styx talking about?
That's happened before. What would you say? What about you? You'll have to maintain a civic structure regardless, I would assume. It can't just be racialist, like, hey, we're a giant white tribe. what about your fans? And some of them do. What about those who say, well, Italians aren't really white, so we're not going to let them in? This Turk who's got like 7 white great grandparents, screw them. This person's a Hapa. That person, they have like their features are just too dark for some congenital reason. How do you get into that?
What you're saying.
It would. You're talking about autism, but you have to design this weird categorical system. It's not so cut and dry as, hey, you're a citizen, or hey, you're not on a civic basis.
There's a core stock to the white race, and those are Celtic people, Latin people, German people, Anglo-Saxon people, Slavs, and so on. We know a white person when we see one. Now.
Hang on. If that's the case, why not DNA tests then? What's the point in getting DNA tests if you know white people when you see them? I'm genuinely curious.
Or a white Jew. What if someone's like
Jews are a distinct people? Obviously, they define themselves.
You don't know.
Yeah. What if they infiltrated?
What if they just say that we're white, which they do on a
I don't
regular
understand.
basis?
You're saying what?
Base Sargon, he knows exactly what they do. They'll lie when it's convenient.
What's the point of a DNA test? I never actually even suggested that. I'm just saying that this concept of a core white race, I don't think is a particularly contentious one.
You can't
if you
one.
don't
That's the problem,
benefit from
Richard.
affirmative action, you're white. Let's just put it that way. Is that
so the Japanese are white and certain
guys, come on.
That is the dumbest categorization of what a white person is I have ever heard. It's entirely contextual. I mean,
and what about
you're not going to have affirmative action, are you? Because you're not going to have any non-white people. That's such a silly thing to say.
I won't even comment upon that. I'm
That's
just simply.
You've got nothing, Richard.
Yeah, that made no sense by Sargon. It's like he's trying to infer that Richard's. Well, it wasn't the best description from Richard. He'll say Sargon's point is, well, affirmative action won't exist in ethno states. So what's your point? So it doesn't really make much sense as a critique.
See, this is
Sargon. This is really tedious.
This is my problem with a lot of people online.
Hold on. I'm basically saying that the core of the white race is not really a matter of great debate. One can ask these prickly questions.
You mean questions that are going to come up necessarily in the establishment of the white ethno-state? Go on.
Sure, they came up in the establishment of an Israeli state. Israel exists. It's a flourishing society. It has a national order. These are practical questions that can be answered.
You missed the consensus.
Sargon, I really find you to be a very tedious and annoying person.
I started with good intentions, Rich. Then you started acting like an ass.
Sargon, I am
not
going to say something that might be the most insulting thing we've ever heard.
I will accept your apology whenever you're ready to give it.
You think that you are more intelligent than you are. And that's actually a really tricky place to be.
How intelligent am I?
I don't think you're very intelligent.
Oh, that's
sorry, Sargon.
Well, that's a personal attack.
Because your opinion's very important.
Sargon, I have debated people who have addressed what I'm actually saying in the core. You're nibbling around the edges in a way that's just tedious and annoying.
Understand what I'm actually saying when I talk to you about your first principle.
I can't understand. Oh, yes, really, Sargon? I can't understand, Sargon. Yes.
This is all autistic. I don't understand what you're saying. This is what you just said to me.
What is your critique of there's clearly a core white stock that is not debatable?
I just gave
What is your
Richard.
critique of that?
How do you identify them?
I'm saying...
That's an argument you hear on the left these days because of this. Because when it comes to race, there is grey areas and overlap. So because of that, therefore there's no way to distinguish what a white person is. Therefore they don't technically exist. And you see that in the erasure of, the Anglo-Saxons didn't really exist. The British never really existed. And it's also tiresome.
How do I identify them? You could do it in a myriad of different ways. One of which is a 23andMe test. One of which is a simple
so DNA testing is going to be required for the ethno-state.
There are going to be people, though, that you might not qualify as white under your opinion, though, that are going to look
I agree with you. I agree with what Styx is saying.
And-
there is
and-
always going to be some tricky, blurry areas to anything. But just because there's a fuzzy border doesn't mean that a concept doesn't exist. I
Yeah,
mean,
but what
there's
we're
a
saying is
fuzzy
you're gonna end
border
up getting
between
a lot of mission
colors.
creep. You're going to see a lot of people using this for their own advantage and saying, "I'm whiter
sure
than
we
you,"
would.
and
I'm sure we would.
therefore-
That's a purely pragmatic issue
No,
that
it's
you're raising.
hugely
That doesn't.
ideological and
No,
based
it's
on your
not
first
actually,
principles. Yes,
Sargon.
it
And
is, Richard.
because
Listen
you
to what
don't
I'm saying.
understand
Brother,
argumentation, you
I
think
don't
this
understand
is some
what
great
you're saying.
refutation, but
Serious.
it's not. It's
I'm
a
trying to
tedious.
explain to
Can
you
I
what
ask
you're
a
saying.
question?
You don't even understand it.
Well,
you
I
don't
think
understand your own
Sargon,
philosophy.
you
Hang on,
just
hang on,
really
Richard,
need to
Richard.
be quiet.
Can
I
I
would rather
think-
talk to
Richard,
Styx because Styx is
come on.
actually
Wait, hang on,
addressing.
Come on,
hang
stop
hang on.
acting like a
Can I
goddamn
jump
leftist.
in?
What are you going to do? Censor me?
Can I jump in with
Ooh.
a quick point here?
Don't censor me, bro.
I can only roll my eyes at you, sorry.
Hey, Richard, let's get Styx's opinion here. Okay.
I would say the complication over this in the sense of the Americas is perhaps more important. And this is what I've tried to make this point to people, and they think it makes me like a Nazi gatekeeper. I've said before, if you're talking about maybe Europe raising up through tribalism, yeah, you've got basically de facto ethno-states throughout time. You've also got empires that are like multicultural, so-called, or diverse or whatever. But on this side of the pond, things are already mixed. The fundamental problem, as you keep pointing out, is pragmatism. It's the same problem that plagues people who want to deport however many millions of people. It's the same problem that plagues communism. Communism on paper, okay, it's great. It's hallelujah, everyone's
I hate that argument. It's like not great on paper. It's actually even worse on paper.
equal. We've all got enough food. You can do whatever you want, as long as you're not abusing others. It's almost like a libertarian utopia when you think of communism taken to its ultimate utopian goal, but it's never worked. It's not pragmatic. It can't be implemented without so much abuse it cripples itself. My problem with identitarianism as it overlaps in a country where it's already not an ethno-state, there's already a strong civic sense or structure, whether it's flawed or works better or worse, doesn't really matter. By trying to displace it with the ethno-state, it will become abusive. And so that sets certain countries apart from others. Now, you may say, oh, well, haha, we've discovered the Marxist plot, because now it's obvious the EU people, they want to pump maybe European countries that were homogenous before, full of migrants, in order to cause the same issue for future identitarians. But I don't really care if some other country, because I have a national identity, chooses to be an ethno-state. There are white nations that are almost homogenous. I mean, think of a Poland. There are black nations that are almost homogenous. But what would you even say, for instance? So let me ask
the
this.
United States is an ethno-state. I mean,
No.
originally.
Based.
Okay,
The
it was,
1790 Immigration Act effectively said that the immigrants to the United States should be white men and women of good character.
I think that's the same in Australia, the white Australian policy. I mean, as soon as you look back to what the civilization of your ancestors, you have to go very far back, a good couple of generations. That's what their policy was.
No one had any dispute with this. What do we do with a white Turk with an Austrian grandmother? Look, those are questions that can be answered. But
And they considered the Irish to be non-white.
No,
They didn't
that's
consider
actually a total myth. That's not
no.
true.
They considered the
When
Irish
were
to be
Irish
subhuman.
excluded in 1790?
No, have you
Irish
seen
were
some
not
of the
considered
stuff
to
from the
be
1800s?
Anglos.
What
Irish
about
were
Latin Americans? What about a white Mexican?
They interestingly did
They, even back then, they foresaw the rise of Nick Fuentes.
not address many of these issues because that wasn't a pragmatic concern. The 1924 Immigration Act did not even address Mexico, even though now Mexican immigration is the most important thing we think about. It was not in what is effectively a racially defined ethno-state Immigration Act, 1924, as well as 1790. So America is a kind of ethno-state.
But
in
that's
sense
the
it was
past,
quite-
though.
I hate that. That was the same argument Andrew Gold did to Steve Laws in that debate. It's like, England's over, mate. It's over. Don't worry about it. It's just over. It's like, we can say no. We can reject that premise. If millions arrive, millions can leave. We can reverse things. We're not in this never-ending doom spiral. Yes, we're in the Kali Yuga. But that doesn't mean we can that doesn't mean we can't, look back to another glorious period before we go back to declining again. We don't need to just embrace the decline. We can enjoy the decline, but we don't need to embrace it.
well, sometimes the past is the future, and sometimes the past has to be renewed, and sometimes we can look to the past for answers. In terms of the creation of a concept of whiteness, America has a very important role to play in this process. Europeans have often defined themselves purely ethnically, and they've been at war with one another. This is another kind of fallacious argument against identitarianism, or you could say white nationalism is like, oh, but the Germans hate the French, and the French hate the English, and the English hate the Irish, blah, blah, blah. All of that's true. America actually has something to teach Europeans in the sense that so many of those ethnic disputes, which were real at a time, were ultimately dissolved, and there is a concept of a mostly English, mostly Nordic, but still white America.
How are they dissolved?
That is something that America actually brought to this whole question.
How were they dissolved,
one
Richard?
quick
I really
thing,
want to know how they were dissolved. What dissolved
sorry,
the national tensions in America?
If I may,
A
just
lot
one
of
second.
the resolution was
If I may,
actually
just 1 second.
intermarriage and other things.
Hey, sorry, just
No,
one
it
second.
was a national identity.
I just wanna
That's also a
add
major as well.
One thing. Thank you everyone for the super chats. I'm collecting the questions on Notepad right now, and I will read the other super chats after the show. I'll only gather the questions that are being asked right now. By the way, National Socialist, thank you for that $100. Holy fuck! And he says it's okay to be a Nazi.
Base super chat.
Appreciate that. But I have all the questions being collected right now, and I'm gonna do all the other ones at the end of the show. So yeah, you guys can go
So
ahead while I do that.
I'd like to move on with the question, which actually refers to what we've been talking about. It seems that a lot of what I heard here is nitpicking on the details of the precision of the identity of race, precisely identifying what's white, what's Asian, what's black. In the end, Sargon, given that we can look at someone and have some sort of information that is more than random. Like when we look at someone's face and skin color, we have more than random genetic information about where they come from. And in fact, if you look at a black person in the US, you can say with a somewhat very high percentage of chance of being right that they have most of their ancestors come from Africa. And given that this is true and that there is information, why would it be a problem if the information is imperfect? Why would it be a problem
Because
if
I
some
explained this
those are
earlier.
classified in a racial classification?
Yeah, the out of Africa thing is bullshit anyways. Everyone seems to have I don't know if the DNA companies put 0.5%, 1% African DNA on purpose just to kind of throw people off. I don't know if that's a thing. I've heard a rumor on 4chan years ago they would do that. But the whole out of Africa thing is, if you watch any kind of Robert Server videos, I thought about doing my own kind of style of video on how out of Africa is bullshit. Do you think that would be a good video? Would you watch that if I made that? Oh yeah, there you go, Dr. Mid. Yeah, see, you and I are thinking alike here. Robert Server, he's pretty. I know he can be quite questionable. People seem to dig up his past in some ways, but he's a proper based race realist. He knows the score.
If
Sick. Thank you for the big dono. Is it Maestro Mark? Should black Americans be individualistic? Our current form of collectivism doesn't seem to work very well at dealing with the crime cultural problems, which I believe are root problems and is causing the unrest in the country. I think the main issue the black Americans have that they'll never ever be able to escape in the United States is they are so spiritually lost. And what I mean by that is they were taken from various parts of Africa. They were nations within the greater continent of Africa. They were then dumped in the United States amongst the other black people, but essentially of different types of black people. And so they're kind of forever spiritually lost. And I think the main part of their kind of cultural issue is they're just not in tune to kind of be in a Western European society. When you look at them, when you see kind of these African tribes still doing their traditional work, they have this perfect Akkadian rhythm in their kind of very agrarian hunter-gatherer society. We can look at that and say it's primitive, it's barbaric, but in a way they're living their most perfect life. And we should respect that. We shouldn't have this power. We shouldn't have this feeling of we need to bestow civilization upon them. So it's difficult for them to kind of like, we can't really undo what's been done. So should they be individualistic? Well, I suppose if you refer to the collectivism views they have, you know, I guess their culture is not that great to jump off from. You need to rely on the 10-15% of black Americans who can push through and break through. They need to drag the rest of their people by the legs to glory. Otherwise, they will forever be in the state they're in, I'm afraid. It is what it is.
Majority can be properly classified.
Okay, as Styx pointed out earlier and Richard assented to, this is going to not only be a very messy process, but lead into purity spiraling, where whatever it is, whatever the group, the movement, the nation, will start self-consuming on the...
Yeah, just a quick aside again. I did that video on the ghetto schools in the 1960s, and they said as well, the bottom 90% was dragging everyone down, which of course it was. That's a huge proportion. But there is that 10%, and there was that black teacher, that guy who was well-spoken, smart guy, you know, I have nothing but respect for him. He wanted to see his people succeed, and he wanted to do everything he could to do that, and that's why he became a teacher. But it's... I mean, if I was to be black-pilled, I'd say it's a losing battle. If I'm white-pilled, it's an uphill battle. And I think until we recognise certain things, all attempts to lift them up are all going to be in vain. That's what I think.
The basis that power will be achieved through racial purity. And that just leads you down a road that you don't really want to go down, because as Styx points out correctly, it's going to end in blood. I think it's a much worse solution to the problem of anything, really.
It doesn't seem
what
to
is
be
that going to be a solution to?
Can
it
I
doesn't seem to me
And
that the
purity
ethno-nationalists are...
spiraling into
Yeah,
anti, you know, anyone who's not a pure Pole must be killed. Is that a problem in Poland right now?
Did I say that anyone who's not a pure Pole would be killed?
Well, you talked about violence, and I don't see the
There absolutely will be
ethno-nationalists
The
talking
question
about
is
purity
purity
spiral.
spiraling necessary? I mean, sure, I can imagine a purity spiral. Sure, that's one possibility.
Well,
I can imagine a
many.
whole host of other things.
Yeah, but do you not think that that's a problem? Setting up a system
be a
that's
problem,
inherently
sure.
going to fail.
It could be a problem, sure. A purity
It will be a
spiral,
problem.
I don't think
You're
so.
already having
Thank
these
you for your
problems.
foreknowledge of history.
You're
The
welcome.
thing is, Sargon, there is
You're
a point
already
at
having
which
these
purity
problems in the alt-right. That's the thing.
you arrive at a point at which purity spiraling would be meaningless for anyone. You would arrive at a point where you would be unsatisfied that Richard Spencer is really white, and you'd be like, "What? To what extent does that information serve me?" And I think that what ethno-nationalists are
I probably should have got that Murdoch episode about the a 100% pure Bavarian phenotype. That would kind of speak quite clear to this part, wouldn't it? Oh fuck, this guy's going from here.
proposing, and I hear that from Tara McCarthy, I hear that from Richard, it's that they will not engage into a purity spiral. In fact, I hear a lot of openness about having borders of diversity that are not super pure. They are very open at the idea that there would be mixed race people in the ethno state, and they would be tolerated.
Is that
I
correct?
don't want to destroy. I don't want to destroy the natural diversity within the white race. The fact is, there is major differences between a Russian and a Scotsman, or a Scotsman and an Italian, an Italian and an Estonian. I think these differences are beautiful. I actually don't really have a problem, to be honest, when you have a mix of a German and an Italian. I think sometimes...
Yeah, somebody said, why is purity spiraling a bad thing? I think we need to kind of like reflect on, if you look at a lot of people who are, you know, right wing like me, but not everyone's like me, not everyone's like you. You know, there's a lot of people who are hyper autistic. We like to put things into little categories and boxes and, you know, divide everything up in a very specific way. And that's what happens in the right. And I think when it comes to purity spiraling, that's why we can never really get along with people on our own side. That's why there's so much infighting, because any kind of one wrong move will lead to, well, I can't side with that person because they're X, Y, Z, but in reality, we need to kind of work, it sounds gay, but work together. You know, if you were creating like an e-celeb government. Not one e-celeb, like Richard Spencer, if he was to become the God King Emperor, he couldn't do it on his own. He would need people by his side. So he would need people like a Nick Fuentes, who they're very much ideologically different in many ways, but similar enough where they should be able to get on and work together. But at least that's my, pretty gay way of looking at it. Because I like a lot of these people, even though they disagree with one another in many ways. I like people who have ideas. I like people who are eccentric. I like people who are, willing just to put themselves out there. And even if they're proven wrong later on, as long as they can, admit that. So again, this is why I still have a lot of respect to Mr. Sargon.
That kind of mixing of different types within the white race can produce something beautiful, actually. I don't believe in purity spirals. In terms of I've met people
but
who
whether
are
you believe in them or
mixed
not
race.
is kind of irrelevant. They're already happening in the alt-right.
You're describing the alt-right. We're talking about the ethno-state. I mean, you're describing,
That will
yes, are there
theoretically
people
be
purity
based on the
spiraling on
alt-right's philosophy,
Twitter?
surely.
You're literally making this argument. People are purity spiraling on Twitter, therefore the ethno-state will inherently purity spiral into a bloodbath. That's
Why
just
do you
Yeah, that's what a lot of people tend to think it's all going to end up in, so there's no point having the conversation to begin with. Mr. L3, thanks for becoming a member. I have set a member thing. It's like really, really cheap because I've not put any effort into what being a member does other than just give me like £2 a month. So I need to maybe set time aside, because do people actually like having these little badges and icons and stuff? Because if so, I will spend an entire day making a bunch of based icons, Murdoch themed icons and things like that. If people like that sort of stuff, I will take the time. But I've just never really, when I watch streamers and stuff, I'm just a bit of a lurker. So if people like those things, let me know.
simply
the
does not
communists shot
follow.
each other?
Does not follow, Sargon.
It absolutely follows. The idea that you think a political purity spiral
doesn't
for control
logically
of the
follow,
country
by the way.
won't end up in people getting shot is absolutely hilarious to me.
Okay.
And no matter how much you try to brush this off,
it doesn't
it's not something
logically
that's going
follow.
away,
It
Richard.
simply
May I ask a
doesn't.
question? May I ask a question?
Absolutely does. You
Hey,
lunatic.
Do you
hang on,
understand
Spencer,
formal
may I ask you a
logic?
Do you
question?
understand anything that I've said? Do you understand a word I've said?
Hang on,
Because you
Spencer.
literally said, I don't understand what you're saying. It's all autistic as far as I can see.
All
But
right.
literally
It's
anyone who
not
understands
very
any of these
powerful
first
what you're
principles.
Let me ask a question.
saying.
Let me ask a question.
Guys, I just love the way Richard talks. It's just his attitude. He's like hyper elitist. I think that's why people sometimes don't like him, because he's so up himself. He thinks he's the smartest guy in a room, and he's just hyper elitist for the sake of being himself. That's why I like him. He's just like, he doesn't give a fuck. I'm right. This is why. He doesn't try to even. He may try to say, I'll see it through your lens, but he doesn't give it any credence. He goes, I understand what you're saying, but what you're saying is gay, wrong, and really not worth listening to. That's a pretty based way to approach conversations, I think.
Spencer, how would you implement the ethno state without people getting killed?
People came here peacefully, therefore they could potentially leave peacefully.
Oh, all right, potentially, but what about the people who wouldn't want to leave peacefully?
Look, first off, there are many ways that this could be implemented completely peacefully. And actually, there are historical precedents for the creation of ethnostates. The Paris Peace Conference of 1919, following the First World War, was a redrawing of the map according to ethno-determinism. So there was a reinvention of Poland. There was a creation of new states like Yugoslavia. There was population transfers that were done by force, but were
VTubing enthusiast, thanks for joining. See, this guy looks like in Schindler's List. Which one? The prison officer with the sniper rifle? 'Cause that's what my mind goes to straight away. I know this is not a PvP server, because the server's too big, so I don't want to be ganked, because I'm a pussy. Although I do like PvP servers, but this character is a normal server, so yeah.
there was
Oh, fuck.
population transfers
I just hit a back button there. Where were we again? Sorry, I just fucked up there.
that were done by force, but were actually peaceful.
Oh, that's fine.
So this can be done. It has been done in the past. There's been massive amounts of migration through planes, trains, and automobiles and ships. and this could be done peacefully.
But
Could
the state
people be?
But the
Could
political
people be
state right now,
enticed to
though,
leave?
but the political state right now in the States right now, everything's really heated. Do you really think most people would leave peacefully, especially seeing how just people get heated over politics as it is right now? Like Trump, for example?
I recognize.
I think this is something we don't even see the most extreme advocates of remigration talk about, like Steve Laws, or even Enoch Powell, where there's ways to get people out the country through peacefully. You repatriate them, give them money, tell them to fuck off. But the reality is, if you have a big enough enclave that says no, then what is your only option other than some form of force? That has to be the only option. Am I right?
The degree to which my concept of an ethnostate is way out in front. It's on the crest of the wave. It's way out in front. Is this political?
Hold on a sec. Hold on a sec. I've removed something here. Sorry, bear with me.
Possible right this instance? Absolutely not. Is this going to happen next election cycle? No. This is something that we have to be thinking about teleologically, in the sense of an ultimate goal that is possible and that we want to channel our energies towards. It is an ideal in that sense. So in the sense of, look, can people be enticed to leave? Yes, absolutely. Recent immigrants can be paid, given cash handouts to return to their countries. Could we, through imperialism, create new ethnostates for people? Could we therefore create an African American homeland that would actually have sovereignty? It's kind of similar, although different, and fundamentally different than the reservation system of creating homelands for the American Indians. Could we create these ethnostates for other races through imperialism? We absolutely could. At the end of the day, might the government have to use some kind of force? Could it use this humanely? I think the answer is yes. All of these things are possible. It's really a question of will. The government uses force all the time.
That's the real problem. It's really probable that none of this will go the way you think it will go. Really probable. In fact, it's really probable that this will completely collapse before you even finish what you're trying to achieve.
So I've removed the chat here.
Even Hitler himself, if you'll probably understand this, referred to the idea of an eternal camp for an eternal struggle. So even if you were to achieve white imperialistic ethnostate, carve the world up in such a way, you wouldn't have stability. So you just end up going through the whole friggin' thing.
Sincere apologies, Ali. Just accidentally hit a back button, and I kind of got off the YouTube studio thing, so really fucked things up there. So let me just see if I missed anything important in the chat there. Yeah, sorry about that. We are back.
Again, so...
Well, I do agree.
In many ways, you sound like a right-wing version of Peter Kropotkin. You sound like you've got this utopian dream that you want to achieve without any violence, but you are aware that there are probably going to be other political actors within your movement, like, I don't know, the sort of Daily Stormer types, who are more than happy to use violence. Who's putting a bullet in the back of who at that point, do you think? And Kropotkin could at least acknowledge that he was going to
I can acknowledge that history can become very difficult. History itself is a slaughter bench. I mean, I can acknowledge the fact that history is not pretty. And I can acknowledge that it's not just the ethnostate.
Yeah, see, if I was in charge and they were like, oh, how are you going to differentiate between X, Y, Z? How are you going to draw the line? I'd be like, listen, I'm going to delegate that to somebody else. They're going to do the dirty work. They're going to figure it out. Just leave me out of it. Just someone else can do it for me.
Ideal. There are going to be competing versions of the world for who is going to rule the planet after the fall of the American Empire. Muslims have an idea. They have an idea of what they want to see. I don't want to see that. And there's going to be, the Chinese have an idea, which has certain advantages and many disadvantages, to say the least. There are going to be competing visions of who will rule the planet after the fall of the American unipolar world. And what I am saying is that we need our vision, that those who have a passion and a will to implement a vision are going to be the winners in this. If we decide to all be individualistic liberals and say, oh, we don't want to play that game, we're so afraid of the state, we're so afraid of violence that we don't want to play that game, those people will ultimately be slaves. Those people will ultimately be subjugated to those who are willing to use the state, willing to use force, and who have a bold vision of the future and the will to enact it.
Right, so you're willing to use the state, you're willing to use force, and you're pretty sure you're going to get shot in the back by one of your more violent comrades. Why would anyone take...
Oh, I just reminds me of George Lincoln Rockwell. What a shame. But yeah, I mean, if you have a state, even the classical liberal, you're not willing to use the state, it's like, what's the point in even having it then?
your path anyway?
Well, I did answer this in a way, and what I'm saying is that we live at the end of an American unipolar empire, and an inheritance of the British Empire to a degree. No,
that's an opinion, though.
Okay, let's not get caught up on that opinion. But I think we would all actually agree that we're in a late stage of this American unipolar world. What I am saying is that if you simply don't want to play this game in favor of liberalism or individualism, all that means is that you're going to be someone else's subject. That the people who are willing to act collectively, who have boldness and a vision, are going to ultimately win. And
this
so
is the weakest thing
this is a Machiavellian point in the sense that one must be a little bit evil in order to combat evil.
But that's the whole point of, I think, why some would oppose identitarianism. They're worried that it will be, in the process of implementing it and perhaps thereafter, will be abusive. In fact, if people aren't, oddly enough, a strange point to make because I hate...
Yeah, that was a pretty base take by Spencer. You know, he was speaking to the reality of how the world works. From a group of your people to a nation to the wider international community. You know, what he said was spot on.
Wedge issues. If people aren't broken up by things like that within the context of a civic structure and they feel racially homogenous, wouldn't a person simply, in order to abuse that population, simply happen to be well-spoken and a member of that race? And Sargon's point, I think, still stands, which is you and McCarthy and others may not have a problem with, like, you know, some Italian person. They've got one Arabic great-grandparent, but they're going to look white. You don't care. Others will care. The problem is that those people, if they manage to seize power, which will happen within a civic structure from time to time, it has throughout human history, they can then exploit that for their own gain. It's the fact is, power corrupts. Sure. It's not going to stop corrupting because it's a white person governing other white people. So if you had a libertarian identitarian state, maybe you could survive that fact. But there's always still going to be that tendency towards growth of government.
Look, in your idealistic libertarian order, there's going to be some fanatical libertarian who wants to stamp out collectivism.
About this. You're the one with the idealistic position here.
That just shows how far deep Sargon was at the time. He viewed his vision of reality as not idealistic. He thought it was just... It's kind of like how... Oh, I'm gonna fucking die here. Fuck. It's kind of like how, I guess, very left-wing people see the world. Like, how can you believe that? I don't believe that, because I'm just a heckin' decent human being. And they like project their view of the world as that is the foundation of which everyone believes. Anything out with that is radicalism.
A fanatic
in a liberal order that has universal rights.
A fanatic libertarian becomes an anarchist.
I have a challenge here. I have a challenge to give to Sargon and Stick. Because what Richard says
I thought
here
you were a
makes
moderator
sense.
rather than a participant in the debate.
No, what I do is that I make the discussion advance in the way I believe intellectually is the most interesting.
You seem to be defending Richard. It's always
you can remove me as a moderator and count me in as an interested agent. I do not care. I'm interested in making this discussion the most intellectually enriching ever that we've had on this stream. So I'm working on that. Now my challenge to Sargon and Styx is...
So someone said Milo really messed up Spencer. Again, what is the lore? Can someone give me a TLDR on the Spencer lore? Because I know people don't like him when he became kind of overly contrarian, like I'm gonna vote for Biden, that kind of thing. Even then, I just thought that was him just being funny. Even if there was an element of him just being sanctimonious dickhead, because he hates the low IQ kind of like angle of our side. But it'd be interesting to kind of get a breakdown of the Richard Spencer. That'd be a good video, but I'm not the guy to make that, I'm afraid.
The critique that you make of Richard's racial views to say, well, okay, you want an ethno-state, it's going to lead to people eventually stabbing you in the back. Can't the same critique be given to the current state of Western societies? Can't the same critique be given to multiculturalism? Maybe, Sargon, one day you'll get Muslims stabbing you in the back, don't you think?
Yeah, but it'll never be sanctioned by the state.
I mean, it's an interesting point there, isn't it? And it probably would, and it has been sanctioned by the state, protected by the state. You know, not formally sanctioned, quote unquote, but, you know, what do we see? So that's not aged well.
If
I
a
don't know
Muslim
about
stabs you in
that
the
one.
back, that Muslim will be punished for it.
Oh yeah, but what
Why?
happens if there's a Muslim majority in UK or Canada in 100 years or 500 years?
Oh, right. Okay. So what we're saying is it's not how we live now. Then, I mean, that's fine. I mean, if you want to accept that what I'm saying is the most moral position to take on this and change the discourse, the context in which we're talking, then fine.
We're
But
talking about the
talking about that
future.
context.
The ethno-state, as I've described it, does not exist right now. It has certain precedents,
I'm
but
aware.
we're talking about the future.
There are
You were
ethno
talking about the
states.
future, saying, "Oh, you'll inherently purity spiral," and
Yeah,
people
but
will
this
say
is an
that Richard
inevitable
Spencer's not
consequence
white.
of the principles you're laying out. As
I think the point Sargon's making doesn't really stand on a wider scale. The idea that your civilization, with the ideology that keeps it afloat, is going to end. But again, you can say that about any civilization, because every single civilization that's came before our civilization has fallen. So the argument that you can't believe that because because 1,000 years later, it's not going to exist anymore. You know, any civilizations will fall. Every civilization will fall. Ours will be no different. The only difference with our civilization collapsing is that it's a gay managed decline. There's no like climactic battle. It's just, you know, it's not going to be like Terminator. It's going to be more like, it's not even going to be like Children of Men. It's probably just going to be like Wall-E. You know, that's my vision of how we decline.
you have admitted.
There's an
I'm
ethno
saying-
state. It's called Robert Mugabe runs one and kicked out the last few white people out and inherited a famine. But the problem is that it's abusive and
Africans,
leads to you becoming a pariah. Well, see, there you go. Then you're bringing up like the inequality thing. The thing that I've already said is this, and I've said this for years. I don't believe in censoring identitarians. I don't believe in abusing identitarians. And if someone wants to associate with members of their own race only, so be it. If they want to make it a cultural movement, so be it. But when you bring it to the level of an actual nation state, which simply has race overlapping, it still is going to suffer from the same excesses. But in implementing it in a state that wasn't already basically an ethno state to begin with, you're going to get a purge. And it could collapse. Look, communists could take over and force diversity down your throat at the barrel of a gun. You'd be a slave.
I agree to the extent that there is always that chance of corruption. All I would say
Oh, a
is
chance
that
of corruption.
even
A chance.
I mean, even in Sargon's perfect classical liberalism, there's always a chance of corruption. So I don't like his argument here. But again, I need to reiterate, I do like Sargon, but this debate is really important because I think it really encapsulates, because he speaks very clearly about what classical liberalism is, what is holding back so many people from becoming identitarian. So he lays it out very clearly what classical liberalism is. And when faced with an identitarian from the right, you learn very quickly that it doesn't really have any real riposte to many of the points that are being made by Spencer.
and even in the state that sticks
I like Sargon. Yeah, I mean his little kind of like not daily videos. I watch the odd one from now and then because to get an idea of what's happening in the UK or things like that. You know, I watch like an odd Sargon video or a Count Dankula video. you know, just to kind of, or Richard IV, he's a good YouTuber about British kind of politics. If you want daily updates on British politics, Richard IV, he's the man to subscribe to.
Styx was describing. I think Styx, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, you would want to live in a kind of nationalist libertarian order, constitutional order, but it, you know, live and let live kind of thing. Even in that kind of order, that is you're describing America to a very large degree. Even in that type of order, there is a chance for corruption. There's a chance for abuse. There's a chance for fanatics to get in charge. Fanatical libertarians.
It's the inevitability. It's not a chance. It's inevitability.
Well,
look at Sarkeesian leading the feminists or something. It's people who project. They're opportunists. They're attracted to power because they want money and they want cars and sex and all these things. It's a human nature. They're the ones that will inevitably end up in control. Only if you properly constrain the state does that stop being so much of a problem, and it is at least tempered.
I don't think you can properly constrain the state. You can. What are you going to constrain it with a paper document like the Constitution? How is that constrained?
Oh no, not the Constitution! I need to get an Arthur Donald squeaky sound for my soundboard. Oh well, first of all, I don't have a soundboard, but again, Arthur Donald squeak, I think would be really good, because I quite like these kind of old debates are really good fun. So having an Arthur Donald squeaky sound would be iconic for this sort of shit.
You constrain it with that, plus a strong civic order, which we had in the United States before Marxists influenced things. But you don't fight them by saying, "Hey, we're going to be white." There are white Marxists.
America's been corrupted as well.
You argue for single payer.
What would you constrain it with? I really want to know. Would you constrain it with men in jack boots with guns? How would you constrain it?
And you argue for things like single payer.
Other than the Constitution, which is what every state has had since the dawn of time. Go on.
Would it constrain what?
You were literally just saying that you can't constrain government power with a piece of paper. You were mocking the idea. Okay, how do you do it?
Government power is constrained by, as Styx said, a strong civic order and people who want to push back against government power. It's ultimately not constrained by the law. The law is an articulation of state power. The law does not constrain the state. So yes, it's basically a civic order of a sense of uprightness and...
The law does not constrain the state.
Yeah, that's the point that Sargon can't see through in this debate, is the... You know, you can't oversee my constitution says X, Y, Z, therefore it's going to be upheld forever. I mean, it's not the issue you guys have in the States. You know, you have the Second Amendment, but then you have the radical lefties say, I don't care, just ban the guns. That's what you're competing with. You're competing with people who are very much anti certain aspects of the Constitution. And the Constitution by its very nature has amendments, therefore the amendments can change. So it's not this eternal divine given document that Sargon was almost making it out to be. Because it was willed by John Locke.
State. Did you just say
no?
That?
Yes, I did.
It's constrained so long as that legal architecture is supported by the people within that civic state.
Styx, okay. Wow, you're thinking thoughts that you've never thought before. The law is an articulation of power. It's an articulation of the state. It does not constrain the state. Yes. I believe that, so do many other legal theorists you've never read.
The functions of the various institutions of the states to uphold their own rules, laws, and norms. But do you not think that people will do that? In a liberal state, sorry.
I think in an ethno-state, there will be a strong sense among white people. White people are attracted to, for better and for worse, they're attracted to a sense of uprightness and individualism, of their own personal rights, their own duties, their own plot of land. That there will be a strong social pushback against any kind of encroachment on all of these wonderful things about society by an overweening state. But I would agree. I'm basically granting, because I'm an honest person, I'm granting Styx a point in the sense that, yes, life is a struggle. Everything's going to be born and flourish and then go into decadence and decay and die, and you have to rebuild it again. This is what life's about. Every state will reach a state of corruption and decadence. That's built in.
Exactly.
But the question is, can there be a new order that will safeguard the white race, that will lead to greater flourishing for European people than ever before?
Yeah, I think that's leading on to another point where I think it's such a difficult thing for a lot of Westerners, Western white people, to comprehend the idea of an ethno state, because 100 years ago it didn't need to be defined. It was already a given because that's the society of which you live in. So because of things have gone so far the other way, having to define it is very unnatural, because it was never something that had to be defined to begin with, because it was never an issue until it is right now.
Where we could reach the stars.
Yes.
Can we create that kind of
Listen,
order?
yes, it already existed. It was called the United States. The problem is
was
the
a kind of
United States. The United States has been degraded by collectivism, by increasing bureaucracy. The individual.
Oh wow. My collectivism. Styx was arrested recently. What for? What are we watching? We're watching a 2018 debate when Sargon was a classical liberal before he became kind of based, which he is now. Kind of. And Richard Spencer in his prime.
Capitalism didn't kill the U.S. It wasn't killed by capitalism. We're not in late capitalism. We're in late socialism. If we have problems, it's because the government right now taxes half of what people make. It tells people what they can do from the moment that they're born to the moment they die. It levies every possible fee.
He was arrested in a pirate costume in public. Isn't that just his normal clothes? I thought he always dresses like he's going to go shoot up a school or something.
It creates every possible bureaucracy and strangles itself. That's why we're having problems in this world. That's why a bunch of opportunists can play craptivist and say, hey, we need to censor all these other groups because we need to maintain the retarded status quo, which is exactly what it is. But the thing is, that was formed by white people when the United States was overwhelmingly right. You push for, like, one of the things that you push for is single payer, which is like the god of all bureaucratic programs. We tried that in our homogeneously white, it's like 98% white state. And our far left government ended up not wanting it because they couldn't even pay for it. I just don't understand. You're relegating the civic structure, the fiscal structure, everything to the back burner in favor of the racial argument. That's all well and good and fine, but the thing is that having that racial homogeneity doesn't make things magically better. It doesn't make things all rainbows anyway.
It kind of does, I would say, in many, many ways. I think what Styx said about, the America that we had that went to the moon, it was a homogenous country. But you're trying to argue because collectivism made everything gay? I'm not so sure. Sorgoy is I have outgrown Fox News kind of based. Yeah, I mean, for late, early 50s now? Late 40s. Gen Xer who, bear in mind, this is Sargon. This is how Sargon existed. And now how he is today. He has come a long way. Yes, it's taking his time. But he might get there.
How are you going to convince people, therefore, the average person? And this is just an honest question, no moral entanglement at all. How do you convince people then that that's something that they would want to pledge themselves to at the hazard of a possible civil war, literally collapse of their entire culture?
Okay, there's a lot here, but let me try to pick up some of these pieces. The United States did reach the stars. We at least reached the moon in 1969. And I would say between the First World War and the, say, 1965, Civil Rights and Immigration Acts, the Great Society, America achieved things that were seemingly impossible, that were almost unimaginable previously. Within a half century, we went from the creation of the airplane to sending a man to the moon. This is remarkable. This coincided, and I don't think it just coincided, I think it was caused to a great degree, with a racialist ethno-state immigration policy that began in 1924. There was a specifically not only racialist but Nordicist immigration policy that was inspired by Madison Grant and similar people who were interested in the conservationist and eugenics
America's
movement.
immigration policy put a man on the moon. That's your argument.
America's immigration policy put a man on the moon. It might have done. Because what was that? Late 1960s. What was the immigration policy in the 1960s? You know, before they just let the gates open. Yeah, it did. Their immigration policy allowed them to get in the moon. Why am I not streaming on Rumble? I've just not looked into it yet. Do I not need another separate card to do it, or do I just push a button and it works? Because I wouldn't mind doing a Rumble only stream. You know, we can watch some Murdoch clips, maybe get a bit spicier. But again, early days on streaming, we're just trying to check out a few things. Operation Paperclip, yeah, exactly.
I just said that no. You know, Sargon, I'm not as dumb as you are, actually. I didn't say
That's
that.
a little bit of a stretch, Sargon.
Sargon, I just said that it coincided, and I actually think
Well, you did say it was causal,
wasn't.
didn't you?
I don't think an immigration act put a man on the moon. Are you this fucking moronic, Sargon? I expected a lot better. I'm not going to address any more of these.
Well, how's that going to
address any more of these nitpicking. It's just
think about the things you're saying. You think about the internal consistencies of your own work.
So why didn't Ghana reach
that was
the stars?
Chudwick, how you doing? Ricochet.
Why didn't Liberia reach the stars? Why after? They had a liberal
I guess it was because they were black, Richard. I guess it was just because they were black.
They didn't have enough Nazi scientists.
Yeah, right.
No, but think about it. Since that period where we went to the moon, we've also accomplished great things despite being in the early stage, of course, not really multicultural. Everyone's at each other's throats on a racial basis, no less. We've done plenty of stuff since then. If you look at the tech that they had like in the 50s or 60s compared to all of human endeavor being encompassed on a few supercomputers, I mean, my goodness, there's basically no comparison. We can do great things now. And I'll say this again. It's not about what was, and it's not about, if you were arguing, Richard, for saying, hey, we're going to ban everyone who's not white.
Sorry, but I watched the Indian moon footage, the moon landing footage. Did anyone else see that? It was just such blatant fakery that everyone knew it's faked, but everyone just accepted it and moved on. They were like, yep, it's fake, who gives a fuck? And it was ironic because I think that's when Rishi Sunak was Prime Minister of the UK, an Indian, and they were developing a new aid package to go to India at the same time they were landing someone or landing a spacecraft on the moon. I was like, why are you giving these people... Yes, it's bullshit. They're not actually putting anything on the moon, but they're making it as if they're putting something on the moon. So why are we in the UK... Well, we know why, because it's an Indian who ran the UK, giving more money to India.
White from immigrating to the US, haha. I wouldn't, by the way, even care. Because that's not abusing anybody who's already part of our civic structure. Go ahead, build the wall, preclude them all from coming, kick out any anchor babies, whatever. But what about people who are already here? And let's say, because this is what would happen, let's say that most of them don't want to take your money or don't want to just listen to you when you say, well, leave, because we're white only now, blacks in the back. It's no colored only signs anymore. What about those some tens of millions of people who wouldn't want to leave? And what about those who are friends with them, family with them, who are white, who would take up arms to defend them? You're looking at more than half the population probably there. You're not looking at, you wouldn't even have a majority of the population on your side. You'd have probably a slim majority at most of just whites within the country. And you'd get you'd get your asses handed to you and hand this country to a bunch of communists in the process.
Look, this is a legitimate, pragmatic critique of how would the ethno-state arise in say, the coming decade. I don't think...
Yeah, 10 years is not happening. This debate is 10 years old, and not making much progress, are they?
That this is going to happen. The United States is sovereign at this point. We haven't seen this massive paradigm shift. I would just add this into the mix, though. When white people are allowed to vote with their feet, they ultimately want to be in what are approximations of white society. Martin Luther King complained about the fact that 11 a.m. on Sunday is the most segregated hour of the week. The fact is, white people are inherently attracted to themselves, to that kind of lifestyle that only we can bring. I would say the entire world is, actually.
I would agree with most people,
refugee
yeah.
crisis is flowing in one direction. It is flowing into Berlin and Munich, and it is not flowing into Ghana.
That's only 'cause
so-
we're idiots, though. To be fair, this is not going to be a subject we're in opposition on.
Yeah, so you don't care how many people are against us. I think, yeah, the main thing you need to do is you don't need to convince the masses. You have to convince the 20% that matter, 15% that matter. Because once you convince the 15% that actually matter, then the remaining percentile will just fall in line anyways. That's how every civilization tends to run.
The migrant crisis, but they're not flowing to the east because they're not going to get free money from the east. It's not because we're white. It's because they're stupid enough to give them.
It's
money.
not just free money.
I'm gonna just speak it for one quick second.
In what
Sorry,
is
one quick second.
Babylon from their perspective?
JF, check DMs for a sec, dude, if you may. Anyway,
Okay, I will. That being said, I'd like to introduce a questioning here on the concept that Stick has introduced, and that I think it also corresponds to Sargon's horseshoe theory. So it seems that
It's not my horseshoe theory. This is something that is ascribed to me all the time. It's you guys saying it because you don't understand what I'm saying, because you guys never seem to want to talk about your first principles.
I'll gladly refute horseshoe.
Sargon's trying to argue that they don't understand, but they do understand what he's saying. They just disagree with it. But Sargon can't understand that they just don't agree with what he's saying. Because Sargon's still living in the bubble that what John Locke said has to be true. It's only 10% you need to convince. Yeah, I mean, that sounds about right, but it's definitely between like 15-10%. That's all it really takes. And that's all you need.
Horseshoe theory while holding up part of its main principles.
Okay, guys,
by the way, at some point.
I'm sorry I've initiated this huge parenthesis. I just have a small question. Is it possible that when you guys talk of collectivism, and when you talk of collectivism, looking at the past of America and the current state of America, you are looking at SJWs, you're looking at socialism, you're looking at the socialistic tendencies that are developing within America, you're looking at the left, you're looking at authoritarian control of government over groups, and in fact giving privileges to groups such as in the form of positive racism or whatever they call it, positive discrimination. I don't know the exact term. Is it possible that this collectivism is different than the collectivism proposed by Richard Spencer here?
I would say, well, go ahead.
Oh,
No,
I was gonna say, what I'm gonna send all the questions I've been collecting from Super Chat to JF.
Also, does anyone, while there's more people watching now, does anyone know when Sargon drops the N-word? Because I would like to please skip over that. Because it's not good optics for a YouTube stream. Do I play GTA Online? I have played it before. Me and the missus sometimes play it together. It's good fun. I just spend all my money on fancy cars in that game. I don't invest in anything else.
And then when we have time, we'll just I only pick the ones that were actual questions. After the show's done, I'll read all the in-between super chats. Thank you very much, everyone. It's really overwhelming right now. And JF, if you can just hold the floor for 1 second, I have to use the washroom. All right, bud?
All right.
Okay, let me address the collectivism individualism dichotomy, because this is something that I get the feeling that a lot of collectivists don't really understand. It's just about the primary value. So are the rights of the individual superseding the rights of the collective? It's that simple. And I'm sure even you can understand this, Richard, right? So like what I'm saying is at some point you will, despite the lack of any sort of existential threat or any real any real need, on point of principle, you will find yourself violating the rights of individuals for your ideological conception of what the white race is. Do you agree with that?
Obviously, the rights of the collective supersede the rights of the individual. An individual receives his individual rights by being part of a collective.
No, they
I
don't
have rights
individual
as
rights if the collective has rights. That's what I'm saying.
that's obviously nonsense.
No, it's obvious.
I have rights. I have rights as an American citizen because I am part of this collective.
Yeah, but because
Obviously,
America is an individualistic nation. That's why you have
it
rights.
is
It
and it
is.
isn't.
Well, I was
I mean,
about to say the same thing.
Individualism is a
agree with
value.
that statement. Yeah, it's right. I mean,
But
it's
it's
a
the highest
value
principle
within
by
it,
which
but it's
your government is
obviously a
run.
collective entity. Not every single human being is an American citizen or can benefit from the rights of being an American.
But Richard, there's
understand the group-
something important here to say about collectivism, which is that like when we see videos of you getting like punched in the face and then people don't want to do anything about it, you are being yourself abused by a collective. Individuals aren't abusing you. No individual.
I don't. Is the collective punching me in the face, or did one guy punch me in the face who's part of a collective? I don't really. Again, that kind of collectivist. You know, Stefan Molyneux's the kind of the same. I like Stefan Molyneux. I don't really know what he's up to these days, but anything that had the word collectivism in it, he even tried to argue that like Platonism was like an argument of individualism over collectivism, and it's just such a weird lens to look at society. This like individualism is like the highest good, which I don't think many people subscribe to now, but back then this was the hot topic.
Is capable of censoring you unless they're crazy and they shoot you in the head. But a government can say, well, that Richard Spencer is sure full of hate. We got to keep him from speaking. Or a collective like a tech site can say, well, no, Richard, you can't have a Twitter. You can't be on YouTube. You can't have this podcast on our domain registrar. It requires a group to truly abuse. Like when people are worried about some random alt-right, like people are worried about you. They're like, oh, that evil, scary Richard Spencer. I'm like, what are you so worried about? It's one fucking person. But if there were millions and millions of people gathering into such a state, they could do the same thing. What fundamentally makes your collective, I guess, more stable? Unless it's true central core values individualism, and if it is, how then do you justify the purge that you will need in order to create your ethno state?
I agree with you that collectives have more power than the individual, which is basically what you're saying. This is my critique of a lot of the libertarian.
I do not have a Discord. I have a Telegram. I don't really know how Discord works properly. Telegram, I barely know how to use. Telegram's just easy to update people. People can engage in the comments to chat. And for me, personally, it's easy just to like wipe all the comments clean when everyone gets to Fed posty. So that's why I quite like it.
Libertarianism that I've heard tonight is that it seems to exist in an abstract plane in which we want to ask moral questions about should a group have a right over an individual. The fact is, in lived reality, obviously groups have more power than individuals, and obviously corporate entities, whether they be governments or even Silicon Valley companies or what have you, have power over the individual. Obviously, these
That's why
rights,
we have
in
rights.
terms
That's
of
the whole
having more
purpose of
power,
rights, Richard. Well
supersede them.
You've actually
The
hit
whole
on something
point of
really
rights. So
important
then
there.
you're admitting
You've
that
legitimately
their
hit on the
rights
reason
supersede
why
the
we
individual.
need individual rights. It's because of the disproportionate power of entities that don't have any legitimate claim to control an individual or violate their rights.
Why
and
does an
yet still
individual
work.
have a claim to this sanctity of
say
not
again,
being
I understand, 'cause
controlled?
we're trying to talk
Why
over
does an
each other.
individual have a claim to some kind of sanctity of not
Because
being controlled
if
by
you
a
don't
collective?
think that they do, then you don't think the SJWs have done anything wrong.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a retarded thing to say. Just like because SJWs, they act within a collective, therefore all collectivism is bad. Just dumb.
You can't
No,
answer
you
that
think it's
question
okay.
because we're
Why
getting
should
to
you
the
have a claim
ultimate
to your personal sanctity,
theology
your own
of
moral integrity,
libertarianism.
because you're a white man, that's you don't care. You just think, oh, it's bad because it's happening to me. That's the only argument you've got here. Your argument boils down to might makes right, Richard.
Ultimately, these collective entities are going to have power over
That's
individuals.
the point of a human right. That's the point of an individualist system,
it's
to constrain
still
the
just
power
a
of groups.
fiction. It's a value that you want to live in such a society in which we grant individuals rights. That's what you're effectively saying.
Can
it's
I
not like
ask
there's
one-
an
can I
actual
ask a
human
question?
right
You
that
live in one.
exists
These
in
are things
some
we
form.
grant to ourselves, and we must
Yeah,
guard
but
them.
I am
Let's
cutting
hear what
through
Styx
the-
has to say. Let's hear what Styx has to say.
I just have a quick yes or no question for you, Richard, and then I've got to extrapolate a small bit from that. do you believe that it's important to create a state that ultimately is stable and prosperous?
Absolutely. And I think it's absolutely important to create a state in which citizens have clearly defined rights which they enjoy and defend.
Okay. The only way to create such a state is for individuality to be, if not the most important core value, at least a superseding core value.
Individuality will be. I'll answer that question. I'll answer that question.
No.
Then I'll let you talk.
Individuality, guys, just to be autistic for a second. Individualistic is what you mean.
Individuality.
Wait, let's have one at a time.
The rights of the individual will be a core concept in the ethno-state, as will the right of families and so on. But it will not be the right. It will not be the core of the formation of this political order. It simply won't. The core of the formation of the political order will be those collectives. It will be being part of something bigger than oneself. But I want to live in a society that allows me to have my say of what I want to do, the path I want to tread in this world. Of course, that's what everyone here wants.
Okay, that's great.
What
But
you
until
wanna
a
do-
white person sits there going, okay, I want to miscegenate for a minute. Is that okay? And then you suddenly, no, you can't do that.
It becomes so much more difficult in the internet era because those white, unless you have censorship at a Chinese or post-Chinese level, some of those white individuals will say, well, I don't fucking see the need to have just whites. Why don't we start a reform movement? We'll get some East Asians in there. They're smart, they're hardworking, they're lawful, and they're kind of light skin. Why not have some Japanese immigrants? And then over time, you'll have these movements.
There will be a point in which pure individual rights will come into conflict with this, with the collective. There will be that point, and the state will side with it. So you could say that statement about effectively every other political order, the political order you live in. There are limits to your individuality. We enjoy the right to bear arms in the United States. We can have guns. We cannot have rocket launchers. I mean, a lot of this, like, I'm a Second Amendment fundamentalist, is a little bit ridiculous, to be honest.
I'm not talking about any of that sort of thing, so you can carry on this tangent if you want, but it's not relevant to what I was saying.
Can you not extrapolate from a specific to a general?
I wouldn't ask
Is
what
that
I can do.
kind
I'd
of
ask what
too
you can
difficult
do.
for you,
Do you-
Sargon?
I mean, do you even know what the tyranny of the majority is? Because that's all you're proposing.
Yes, I know what that phrase
It wouldn't
means.
even be that, though, because you wouldn't have the majority forming the ethno-state. The problem is, number
There
one,
would be an elite
pragmatism.
class that would enforce a ideology that
You
would
think
be
you'd be
part
part
of
of
the
that
state.
elite class?
The elite class, that's actually, I've always kind of thought about that as well, because if you don't have this elite class, this sort of like nobility, this sort of like warrior priestly class, then who are you left with? You're left with you're left with just, your local councillors. You're left with the people who want to be involved in politics, who mostly are terrible people. You want people who are like bestowed this sort of like, you need to be in charge, and they need to almost like not want it. The idea of the king that doesn't want his crown, like an Aragon. But so you need this elite class that rules because it's destined to do so. At least that's the way I see it. It's idealistic, but that's how every other civilization was working.
What
Of
if you
course
end
I
up
would.
being one of the Untermensch, though?
Of course, every society has an aristocracy. We have an aristocracy in this class, in the modern America. It is basically, obviously, people of extreme wealth who are connected with finance, but it's also a class of mandarins who are produced by the Ivy Leagues and related colleges, who are basically have an ideology instilled in them. They want to reproduce the ideology of the state. They want to ultimately reproduce the order in which they govern.
And yet they have
Yes,
no
that
rights.
is a natural state of man, and obviously we would reproduce that in the ethno-state.
It's
The
it's a
state
form of
would
oligarchic
have-
authoritarianism, yeah.
Yeah, but they actually don't
which
have
is
any
what we
greater
live
rights
in
than
right
you, Richard.
now, and which is a natural state for mankind. The state would obviously have a say in education. We would want to continue the existence of the ethno-state. We'd want to create an elite class of highly educated, a kind of warrior guardian class of people who would maintain this
Based.
order.
Fucking
This
best.
is what we have now. The fact that you are laughing is because you
Guardian.
cannot see what is right before your eyes. This is
Richard,
the
Richard,
natural
Richard.
state of
I'm
mankind.
I'm not chuckling because I see that as necessarily untrue in the current state. What I'm saying is that's a bad thing, though. It's just oligarchy. It's a form of degeneration. It's a form of
Feudalism is best. I mean, see me people say whenever you promote kind of right-wing ideas, like, oh, you want to be authoritarian, you know, what? If you look at the UK, how can you look at that and not see it as some form of every government needs to have authority, and we live in a sort of strict liberal authoritarianism that's imposed upon us, whether we like it or not. So we have authoritarianism already. We just want a different flavor of it.
It's not feudalism. You
degeneration.
don't know what feudalism is.
It's a degeneration. It's a degeneration away from the concept of the godlike or ascendant human being able to accomplish things as an individual and be upright into their reliance on a collective. And therein lies the problem. It doesn't matter whether it's monarchism, okay, a royalty is your collective and your abusive force, or an oligarchy, as you're pointing out, we have a fusion model right now. It's because we've fallen away from the concept of individualism. Now, again, it's
there
not
was
even
an
so much
oligarchic class in previous generations in the United States.
Of
no
course
question.
there was, but there was also an extremely deep golden age era style appreciation during the Enlightenment. It wasn't just in the US for the concept of individuality. Towards the concept, people should try to educate themselves. They should try to work hard. It falls in line with the Protestant work ethic a little bit.
In fact, Enlightenment ideology developed in a context of absolute monarchy.
Yeah,
I mean,
so opposition to absolute monarchy, exactly.
Not
opposition to abuse by authority.
You can find certain kind of radical egalitarians who were opposed to it. You can find plenty of enlightened thinkers who weren't opposed to it at all. The fact is that is the historical context.
Yeah, our country was founded by radical individuals
who were slave-owning plantation men.
Yeah, of course.
I mean,
And that's what you're for.
Can you really separate Jefferson? Can you really separate Jefferson's ideas from the fact that he was part of an aristocratic leisure class that owned Negro slaves?
Yes, I can. It's quite easy. Because back then, their understanding of science was, hey, these are basically the missing link. So, I mean, they had never attempted to actually take someone who was black at the time, say, hey, here, Kunta, why don't you start reading? Therein lies you're trying to look at the past, and you're kind of doing what a social justice warrior would do with maybe a Confederate statue. Honestly, we've got to judge it by modern, objective moral standards. You can't do that either. That's intellectually dishonest.
This is the inherent contradiction in the founding of the United States, Richard. You know, that's like, I don't even know where to begin. Like, these ideas are completely separate from the people that uttered them. They're true on their own merits, regardless of who said it. I mean, I'm amazed at how much ad hominem you come out with in this, and how much pathos you've been arguing with. Very little logos, very little ethos, but so much to do with your feelings. It's so weird. I mean, like,
that went a bit too esoteric for me. I don't think I quite understood what he meant there.
Let's talk about
so
the white identity.
It's almost like
no. Hang on. Let's get to the white identity.
I'm a human being existing in the real world, and I'm not a computer program.
Who really understands what they're talking about. That's the thing, right?
Oh,
like
right.
You talk with deliberate lack of specificity. Because
I don't. I'm the one who actually brings up the historical context for these ideas.
You are arguing for brute force because you can do it, or at least you want to be able to do it, which means that you don't do anything other than legitimize people who use brute force against you. You're not talking about justice. You're not talking about morality. You've specifically avoided these subjects. So let's talk about like the white identity. I'm genuinely curious. Like, what exactly do you plan on doing with it? You know, are you going to say, like, I want you to understand my whiteness in the same way a far leftist will say, understand my blackness?
Everyone has an identity. Everyone has one, whether one likes it or not.
I want to know about that one particular.
Race is the foundation of identity. Identity itself is a very rich concept. There are many layers to it, many of which are elective, many of which aren't elective. Don't just think in terms of ethnicity or race, but your family, your region, where you were born. Those are things that you can't choose.
I know. What I'm talking about, I understand all that. But what I'm saying is, I want to know what prescriptive nature it's going to have.
my vision of the white race is not merely white people continuing to exist. I can imagine a world in which white people continue to exist as humiliated morons wearing VR helmets given to them by their Zuckerbergian overlords. That is not my ideal for the white race. My ideal for the white race is to revive the past, in a way rival the past, by shooting for the stars, by reigniting this Faustian fire within us, by becoming who we are.
I like the romantic spiel, I must say. It's kind of like, he's kind of described the sort of like Hyperborean edits. We do need to kind of rediscover who we are, because who we have been told we are from everyone else is all the negative connotations you can think of. We have to reignite that. And people kind of want to gloss over that, but that is just so essential. Because as soon as everyone, not just individuals, but as a collective, we have an understanding of who we are, then that's what we can really orientate towards new glory. Does that make sense, or that just sounds super gay? But I think I'm onto something there.
I have an idealistic conception of what the white race can accomplish, whether it is in terms of space travel, whether it's in terms of scholarship, whether it's in terms of art and music. All of these things are potentials within us that are getting bogged down in our quest for equality and our quest to redeem the world or bring democracy to the Middle East.
I'm actually anti-equality, but what I want are the
The classical liberals anti-equality. What are you talking about?
Specific details, prescriptive details on what you think whiteness means. Because, and the reason I asked this, right, and I want to explain this before you interrupt again, right? It seems that what you're talking about is a form of, effectively, racial socialism. That seems to be what you're
It's kind of based. Racial socialism. It's got a bit of a twang to it. I'm sure it's called something else, but that sounds pretty good.
Kind of arguing for, and that's not growth, that's not expansion, that's not prosperity. What that is, Ben Shapiro is completely right when he says this is like locking down the system and then trying to micromanage and control it from all aspects as much as your power dictates.
Did you listen to all I was talking about in terms of human flourishing?
Are you not? If you don't follow, I can go through these concepts.
Do you not believe me when I say that I want us to achieve greatness in the arts?
I totally
and that is not going to be a
socialist
socialist program.
I totally believe that that's what you want. But what I'm saying is this is not a method to achieve it, and I'm trying to explain why, but you're not really thinking about the details.
Okay, in your opinion, a white ethno-state is not the best method to achieve greatness in the arts?
Absolutely not, no.
Okay.
I mean, you just need to look at what we created. Look at romantic paintings, look at the aesthetics. I'm a man who likes aesthetics. See, when you see those like Rome edits, what jumps out to me is just aesthetics. I like the Romanesque architecture. I like neoclassicalism. I like Gothic. It's all great. What beautiful artistic stuff did we come out with after the Second World War? Brutalism. Yeah, that's great. I think the last great artistic kind of architecture would be Art Deco. I love a bit of Art Deco. Sort of like old school New York. BioShock. I love that shit.
That's your
Can I weigh in with my
I'm just using historical tradition for this. I mean,
as opposed to Austro-Hungarian Empire that actually did give birth to Beethoven and Mozart and many others. Beethoven.
Can I weigh in
you get my drift.
briefly here?
You get my drift.
Have the Germans spread white people around the world, or was it some other individualistic nation that did that?
The German.
Let's think about that. The Britain spreading white people around the world. Did they do it because they're individuals? Again, that argument made no sense by Sargon. They did it because they're part of the empire. The empire is the most pure form of a collective in many ways, isn't it? So that made no sense.
Germans traveled all around the world, of course.
But
The Germans traveled to the east as well. The Germans gave tremendous value to Russian culture.
That explains why in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand they all speak German, right? What you're asking for is an insular ideological position that ends up
you making
focusing
an
too much on
Anglosphere
itself
argument?
rather than the outside world. I mean, this is why I'm asking you for the details on what you view whiteness as.
I have just been talking about this at length. I don't know what you want.
Details, Richard, not your idealistic, imaginary, religious conception. I want to know what, in a prescriptive manner, you require white people to.
What is white? I mean, the idealistic, spiritual, sort of romantic view of what it is, that's not, I mean, that description shouldn't be thrown aside. That is integral. And for those who can't understand it, they're just trapped in wanting to make everything material. They don't want to see anything through the lens of, you know, a spiritual sense, which is kind of what Richard is arguing. Like Carl stuck in the classical liberal frame of mind. You know, he wants, I want you to write in a, you know, an autistic little box what it is. No ifs, no buts, no grey area, no overlap. But that's just not how, that's not a good vision of metaphysics in my mind.
Do.
What? I don't understand.
Sargon, it doesn't seem that Richard here is being a moral authority on white people.
I'm not
He's
asking to be a
saying-
moral authority on
I
anything.
think that
I'm asking him
his view
how
of
white
whiteness-
people are going to get to the stars using his idea of whiteness.
It seems that what he's saying, and you can correct me on this, but let me try to phrase it for you. It seems that what he's saying is, I look at history, at the history of white people, I'm proud of it, and I want to pursue that. I want
We
to
was
do it
Kangs
again.
for one
I
thing.
want to do it. We was kings.
We was kings?
We with Kangs, look at our beautiful artworks. We was
Yeah.
also slaves in Egypt.
Is it not okay to be proud
No, retard, we was pharaohs in Egypt.
of
It's
your
pathetic.
ancestry?
You're claiming credit. for
Pathetic to be
something someone else
proud of
did.
your history.
You're claiming credit for something
Pathetic.
someone else did. You've done nothing.
Oh,
It's like
that's
if literally
ridiculous.
you saying
I'm not
white
not
is
taking
the
away
best
the
achievement you
credit
have,
of
then I've
Leonardo
got
da
that, then
Vinci.
Styx
That's
has got that.
ridiculous argument.
You're not making arguments, Richard. You're saying idealistic nonsense that's not going to translate into reality. And as soon as I ask you to translate any of it into reality, you're like, "What? I don't need to."
I genuinely don't understand.
I like how Sargon impersonated his own self in how he was portrayed in Murdoch. But what did he say again? He was like but my liberalism, my individualism.
What you want from it. Why don't you just tell me what you want me to say,
I-
as opposed to asking me like what number am I thinking? Of?
Requirements of whiteness, Richard.
The
can't make
requirements
it any
of what
simpler.
what one requires to be white?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking?
What you? What
There
you
is a
think
racial
being white
basis
is
to
going
that that is
require.
measurable to a large degree. That is a genetic basis. But there is also a spiritual and you could say mental being to whiteness. That is something that is very difficult to manage, to measure, rather. It is a worldview, a way of being, a way of doing things, a concept of the family,
explain
which is
how
a
it's
deeply
done.
white concept. The concept of community, that we have a particular concept of community, which is very different from a concept of a community in, say, the Middle Eastern world,
Or in Russia.
which is fundamentally different and tribal and other things. The fact is, there is a being to whiteness that reproduces itself wherever white people are.
But you
There are
can't give me
differences
a
between
specific
Russia
example,
and the
right?
United States, but there is still actually a kind of common ground for white societies that is recognizable, that other people recognize it. Other races easily recognize a white society for what it is.
Well,
May I
that
ask a
doesn't
question
make
here?
sense because they're all different.
Okay, after, because I'm gonna send JF the list of questions too, but I have one particular one I want to ask from Tim actually on Twitter. Question for Richard Spencer: are Jews white? Why or why not? If they are white, are they the best white people due to their high IQs? If so, why does the alt-right attack the Jews so much? Is it jealous?
Sure, I can answer all these questions.
Sure.
Jews, very many Jews, particularly Ashkenazi Jews, have white skin, but Jews are not white in the sense that Jews are a particular defined people with a different mentality, certainly a different history, certainly a different conception of themselves. And actually, Jews are recognizably ethnically different
Right, so it's not
in
about them being
measurable
genetically
ways.
Jewish.
Jews are not European. No, they have a different story. Now, obviously, Jews and Europeans have interacted in a host of ways. There's a lot of common ground, but they are fundamentally not European.
Yeah, but don't you recall that we were talking about how you're going to identify a white person? And so now you're saying that there are going to be a bunch of non-European infiltrators who just look white.
Bad faith.
I mean, you're not going to know they're Jewish unless they tell you.
You that's true, actually, to a very
I know
large
that's
extent.
true, Richard.
There are many highly assimilated Jews, but in the sense who still nevertheless
You are
understand
gonna need
themselves
DNA
as
tests, is what we're
Jews.
saying.
Okay,
If Jews understand themselves as Jews, if you ask a Jew, "Are you Jewish?" they will say yes, regardless of whether they believe in God or not.
okay,
and
I'm
that's
gonna-
an ethnic or national thing. That's not real. That's not the Jew isn't a race, but it is like ethnic and national. That's
it actually is a
that's
race.
certainly a sub identity. Well, no, it's an
There are
ethnicity.
different
basically.
ethnicities within the Jewish people. There are three large ethnicities of the Jews. There's the Sephardic Jews, Ashkenazi, and
I know.
Okay, so
Mizrahim,
we've established
who are
that
the
the Jews are
Oriental.
Exactly.
infiltrators into the white ethno state. How are you going to keep them out?
It's a great question, Sargon.
They can be recognized. I mean, I don't need to say.
Yeah, but you're saying they can be recognized, but we've already established that a lot of them look really white. So if you
They
can't
do.
actually recognize them, and they're lying to you, they're doing like a Jewish form of tekiah and saying, "Well, I'm not a Jew. I'm a fellow white person."
Called
Now the stream
Crypsis.
is illegal in Germany. I just learned that the stream was blocked in Germany. But
Fuck yeah, I did it. That was what I was trying to do.
I just
Hey,
want to
hey,
point out that it's actually probably my fault. I had a chat with Millennial Woes, and that was blocked in Germany. And if it's not him,
okay.
all those other ones are fine.
Hey,
It's
look,
me.
guys. I have a bunch of questions here, so let's just try and go through a few of them. These are the ones I selected from the super chat. So, a Constantine's commentary, $5. Thank you very much. How does Richard justify his pan-European identitarian views when there's conflicts like the Yugoslav wars and several other inter-European conflicts?
Right. I am idealistic as a pan-European. I do believe that between these ethnicities, these broad ethnicities within the European race, between Slavs, Celts, Germans, Latins, Anglo-Saxons, and so on, that we actually can achieve a kind of brotherhood. Now, there's always going to be differences. There are always going to be interfamilia fights. There's always going to be rivalries. But from an idealistic standpoint, can we achieve a brotherhood? I think the answer is yes. There are many precedents of imperial orders that are pan-European. You could say the Catholic world, the world of Erasmus, was a glimpse at a pan-European world. America is to a very large extent a pan-European society, although it's a predominantly Anglo-Saxon and Protestant society. It has nevertheless absorbed many other European ethnicities. So
Yeah, is that the only way we're going to get out of this mess? Because I've never put much thought into it. I know Oswald Mosley was a proper pan-Europeanist as well. And I think that's maybe our last chance of actually getting out this mess together, is some form of pan-Europeanism. That seems to be the only way we can, fight. Otherwise, we're just going to be, continue to fight amongst ourselves.
there are precedents to this, but yeah, there is a bit of idealism to pan-Europeanism in the sense that when you look at the 20th century, there are more than enough examples of inter-ethnic hatred. I think we have to, as white people, this is our problem. We have to overcome our own internecine, intramural hatreds.
All right, that guy T, what's up, buddy? $10, thank you very much. Should future ethno-state concepts mirror modern ethnic demographics, so Black Americans, Southern whites, etc., or should we seek a genetic origin, Africans back to Africa, Europeans back to Europe, etc.?
I think probably more of the former than the latter. I think sending all African Americans back to Africa is a bit much. First off, there has been a small but significant amount of intermixture between Europeans and Africans, where African Americans, we've measured this, are generally roughly somewhere in the 10, 20, maybe 25% European. So I think they are, and they obviously they speak English. They're Christians, Protestant Christians to a large extent. They do.
That's something the Americans listening need to understand. The Africans you have in America, they have been there for centuries. They've mixed a little bit. Their average IQ is about 85 now. In Europe, we have Africans from Africa. Think about that for a moment.
You have a different being than Africans. So in a future ethno-state, I probably think the most reasonable thing would be an African American ethno-state somewhere.
So you
but
plan
again,
to balkanize the United States?
Sure.
All right, so
No,
this
no,
one's
no,
interesting.
Fuck it, balkanize it.
It's
a good
I actually
solution.
already answered this. I would be willing to engage in imperialism if we need to create a African American homeland somewhere for
Who are we
them.
gonna conquer?
I would obviously white people would do this.
Obviously.
I don't know. I don't know. There is land available. We could create
Where?
an African American homeland for them. I would be certainly
It's-
willing to do that.
In the middle of the
Greenland or
ocean, I take it.
No, in Greenland.
I'm
there's
not
loads
that
of space
cruel.
there. Perfect for Africans.
I was making a joke, Rich. I know.
I know.
I know you're not Bert.
Okay, this one is particularly for Sargon. Braving Rune, what's up, buddy? $5. Israel required Arthurian intervention and redraw.
Why the fuck can Andy Worski not read? I know reading chats can be a bit off because the grammar or the way it's phrased, but he's not been able to string a single sentence together during this entire debate without making a mistake.
Drawing of the map to establish. Why doesn't Sargon criticize the existence of Israel?
Because Israel already exists. If this was a plan on a table saying, why don't we do this? I would say, no, that's a bad idea. But unfortunately, there's no point me going back to, 1947 or something. This is something that's been in existence for, 80 years or whatever it is. I just don't see the point in... It's not a relevant political issue, is it?
All right.
Can I weigh in on that really quick?
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, for sure, Sticks.
I would stand aside from Sargon on this. I would criticize the state of Israel myself.
Hang on.
There's genocide.
Sticks, don't carry... I'm not saying that Israel is above criticism. Or anything
No,
like
no,
that.
I
Israel
know that.
should be
I know it.
criticised, but
No, I know, but
the
I'm
idea of
criticizing it
establishing Israel
existentially.
at this point, I think, is irrelevant. I don't think it's going to happen.
No,
And
but I'm not No, I'm not saying you wouldn't criticize like the Israeli government. That's not what I'm saying. No, I'm saying what the Israeli state has been doing, oddly enough, is imperialistic in nature,
I agree.
abusing its neighbors. I do happen to think that maybe a one-state solution is the actual final solution there. Not to use a loaded term, but
No pun
Sorry, yeah,
intended.
maybe I should have been more clear because I realise it's a hot button issue. But I'm not happy with the expansion of the state of Israel. If you see the border expansion, to me that's distinctly imperialistic, and But unfortunately, this happened.
Imperialism is kind of cool. You have to kind of admit, right? Throwing your weight around. If you have an empire, even Sargon speaks fondly of the British Empire. But then he's like anti-imperialism. I mean, imperialism for its own sake, if you're playing like the Total War games, you're just invading for the sake of it. Not cool. But if you have a reason and be militaristic, that's how empires exist.
Decades ago, there's nothing. It's not something that's going to get any political traction. You're not going to roll it back. I don't see the point of it.
I don't know. Maybe.
All right, we have
Maybe.
we have a
So
question.
if you want to pass under the Sargon radar, just act fast, and he's gonna acknowledge your state if you built it fast enough before you could criticize.
What you mean if it happens before I'm born? And if you want to get away with something, do it before I was born.
There's no point in criticizing Richard Spencer's ethno-state. I mean, this thing is like 2 weeks old at this point.
We have a very serious question. Actually, two people asked this question. It was Mr. Mediker, what's up, man, and Anderson Paladin, $5.
Base
How many
Metzger.
ball pits in the ethno state?
That's a good question.
Ball pits?
Can I rub your belly in a ball pit?
It's a meme. It's a meme that's been happening all week, dude.
What was the ball pit meme? Is that something, that's... I don't hear that these days. That must have been a zeitgeist sort of meme. Yeah, shout out to old Jim Metiker.
P Dog Knight, $5. how can Israel be a model for an ethno state when it is multicultural?
Yeah, it's a quarter Arab, isn't it?
Yes, it's interesting though. It is a modern multiracial state to a degree, but it is fundamentally a Jewish state. Very interesting. Land is actually owned by the government or a kind of entity connected to the government. What I've read, effectively 90% of land that can be owned is owned by an entity, and therefore it is effectively rented to Jews. It is a state that has Arabs in it, that has other ethnicities in it, but it is a state that is fundamentally for the Jews. Without venturing an opinion on Israel, I have many criticisms of Israel. I don't want American foreign policy to conform to Israeli designs in the Middle East. However, I ultimately understand the Jewish desire to have a homeland, to have a place that has a right of return for all Jews, and that is a Jewish state. If we had an ethno-state that was similar to Israel, it is a white state, but there might be other races within it, but it is fundamentally for white people and the ultimate survival and flourishing of the white race, I would certainly accept that. So Israel is...
Yeah, that's a good point that he's raised there that I think is not really discussed. When you see Steve Laws talk about things like total remigration, they all have to go. I do get it, that sentiment. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are in that realm as well. But if you imagine that we are in a globalized world, that there needs to be, doesn't need to have a huge, like imagine London for example. London is a finance centre of the world. So kicking everyone out who's not purebred English doesn't really make much sense. A place like London should be somewhat cosmopolitan to maintain its status in the world. That being said, having like African slums like Peckham, where all the gang violence takes place, they all need to go. But there needs to be some, to maintain the status in the world. Because like it or not, we live in a globalized world. So kicking everybody out doesn't really make much sense. At least in my mind. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm still a remigration advocate, but not a total remigration person.
Is a model for the ethno-state, as I imagine it. Obviously, it'd be very different. Population differences between the white race and the Jewish people are tremendous. A white ethno-state, as I imagine it, would have to be much bigger. But certainly there are things that we can learn from Israel.
See, I wouldn't want to be part of any state
Desperate Italian, could we keep a couple of Japanese? Yeah, we'll keep a couple just for you.
that was modeled on Israel, shooting at your neighbors, getting hit by rockets constantly, have to rely upon a more powerful foreign state to prop you up with basically handouts, like they're trying to end them to Pakistan. Thankfully, now Rand's on board. That doesn't sound like a great idea to me, but if you want to, yeah.
I think you would actually be happy in the ethno-state sticks. You would have a little Vermont redoubt, and you could YouTube from there. There'd be green hills, and
He lives in Vermont. That is already like an ethno-state. So Styx is already living the dream in many, many ways, isn't he?
But I would be censored. I would be censored still on
beer and
YouTube.
marijuana and all that kind of stuff.
No.
He'd be
So we have a
great until
very-
he was being told he wasn't being white well enough, and then he'd
Yeah.
change, wouldn't he? But you
We have
you
a
can't
very-
know what the prescriptive nature of whiteness is, can you? I mean, I'm genuinely curious about this. I mean, if you want to write an article or something, I would love to know. I genuinely want to know what it is someone has to do to be white in your conception.
Is he still asking that fucking question? I knew that was the meme of this debate, but I didn't realize how many times he just kept on having to ask again because he didn't like Richard Spencer's spiritual/metaphysical conception of it. Because I don't know why Sargon is like rejecting the metaphysical argument there. I guess because you can't really argue against it.
Of white.
I've actually already addressed this.
No,
Alright,
you've
let's
ignored
move
it and
on.
you've obfuscated.
I haven't
You've
ignored it.
deliberately avoided
Let's
answering
move on to
the
the next
question.
question here. Faisal N, $50. Thank you very much. You always compare yourself to the rest of the world having an ethno-state, but none of them are like you. They don't have laws that say only one race is allowed. They just don't accept mass immigration and don't create a government programs for illegals.
Well, that's effectively the same thing. I mean, there is no law in Japan, at least to the extent that I understand Japanese law, that says only Japanese people are citizens, but that is effectively true. There's no need for a law. In terms of Japanese immigration policy,
Again, sorry to interrupt again, but that was the point I was making earlier. The Japanese don't need to really define only Japanese people can be Japanese, because it's already a given. That's the challenge we face in the West. What the fuck's this? Warrior's Embrace. Oh, I've got the same thing.
there are very, very few refugees. I think there were a dozen or so last year. It is a state for the Japanese people. If I were to immigrate to Japan, I would have a very, very difficult time even renting an apartment. Needless to say, becoming a citizen. It's possible, but exceedingly difficult. There are similar situations, at least in the past, in places like Switzerland and other places like that. The most governments on Earth, whether they have this written in law or not, they are effectively places for those people. India is for Indian people,
like
the
an
many
ethnic
ethnicities.
state.
It is only these white countries.
Do you not think it's fucking wild wherever you go? It's not as if you see like, oh, there's like another British person over here in Greece or whatever. Everywhere you go, Indians are everywhere. Absolutely fucking everywhere. Wild, isn't it?
That over the past, say, half century have redefined themselves as platforms for the world. And so America was on the vanguard of this. But you see this even now in Germany, where there used to be that question, wer ist Deutsch? Who is German? What is German? There was a concept of Deutsches Blut, that is a German bloodline, and so on. Now you have these Germans parroting their American NATO masters and saying, well, what it means to be German has always been multicultural. It's always been, individual kumbaya-ness. So it's only advanced white societies that don't want to define their state, whether explicitly or implicitly, in terms of race or ethnicity.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Hang on. Switzerland has always been multi-ethnic.
It has been multi-ethnic. The cantons have actually been ethnically defined. Yes, those are
But as a
individual
state,
provinces
it's
within.
multi-ethnic. I mean, I suppose that given your concept of whiteness that you refuse to really tell me about, there's no difference between French and Germans.
Obviously, there are differences between French and Germans. You're putting for Switzerland, which has 4 language groups: Italian, French, Romanish, and Swiss German. Yeah. And basically, you're saying, oh, this contradicts ethnicity. It's the opposite.
It
is
different ethnicities.
Federal order in which there were ethnically and linguistically defined cantons. It is those are individual ethno-states within a broader federal ethno-state order.
So would you be happy in the United States having giving Florida to black people or something? But
Sure,
still having
let's do it.
That seems like quite a good deal. I mean, any Americans in the chat now? See if you were given the option. Look, all the black people, they're gonna take Florida. It's gonna be theirs, and that's it. That seems. You live in Florida? Well, you got to pick somewhere else to go.
US, yeah.
Let's do it.
May I
Okay,
bring
so
up the
it
floor?
has come a lot of times. There's a lot of time that Sargon has commented on this, and so I want to solve this for good. It's the story of, did Richard define what you call the prescriptive requirement for whiteness?
Yeah.
So first, I'd like Sargon to define by prescriptive, because prescriptive here, I'm not sure you mean prescriptive. Do you mean the minimal requirement to be white, or do you mean what it entails for Richard in his emotion and his perception of whiteness, what it entails to be white? Because that's two separate things.
I've asked it several times. I said, you have a conception of what whiteness is, and you give really, really vague sort of whiteness is, just really broad statements. But it's like, okay, but when a white person is going against that, I mean, how are you going to know?
Well, it seems that his answer to this is, these are the Caucasians who self-identify as Caucasian, who can be genetically identified as such, if you want to go into the details. It seems that's what he's talking about, and that's his answer. Are you satisfied or not by this
No,
answer?
not at all, because this is going to set the tone and tenor of any kind of larger cultural requirements. And so people like Styx, who might want to go against the grain, are going to find themselves necessarily censored by the larger government, who isn't going to consider him white enough.
But no, you can have opposition in a country. It doesn't seem that Richard is saying we should make white people all adhere to the same moral principles.
Exactly.
I think he absolutely is saying that.
How
could you not?
Within a country, there are going to be interfamilial disputes. Within the ethno-state, there would be a left and a right. There would be libertarians within the ethno-state. There would be socialists, democratic socialists within the ethno-state. We would have lots and lots of battles. There'd be a
sold on the ethno-state. Jesus Christ! If you're going to let socialists in.
Man, to bring something up just real fast, I'll go through some more questions, but Rachel Cooper...
Can I get to this? Because this is the thing, right?
Wait, I'm going to just say one thing. Just hold your thought. Rachel Cooper just threw £5. We are number 2 worldwide trending on YouTube right now with 11,200 viewers. Guys, 2 worldwide.
Got 134 viewers right now. That's the most I've ever had. So maybe people like these sort of, historic debates, because there's plenty of them. I was going to initially do the one where it was Asmongold, Trainwrecks, Destiny Hassan, Sargon, and Nick Fuentes. That was I really, really like that one. So we can maybe do that one another day. Or if anyone has other kind of debates to go over. Just that historic stuff, because it's always good to look back on. Again, my channel tends to look back on things. Look how far we've come. Look where we were. And in a sense, this is a kind of a similar vein of what we do in the channel. We look back to know where we are, to know where we're going.
Come on, hit like. By the way, this is a great conversation. I'm really enjoying this. Go ahead, start on with what.
Yeah. Okay. So like you. I mean, how is it you define whiteness? I'm not specifying genetic either. You definitely think there is a cultural component to being white. Is that correct?
There's a very broad cultural component to being white, no question. One can define whiteness, one can measure whiteness in terms of genetics. That is a real thing. That is a tangible thing. But identity is a much richer concept, and it includes things that are very difficult to describe, and that you can only describe by using terms like ways of life and mentality. And
yeah, well, you're talking. There are.
And you might not like those terms, but that's all I've got.
Richard,
because identity is it's a liberal art. It's not a hard science.
A whole host of academic literature and terminology that's ready to deal with what you want. What you're talking about.
Just relying on the experts. Anyone see that pool I did in Warcraft there? That was great. Thank you very much for the $5, Suckduck5915. I like how he can define English to Goldstein, but not here. Yeah.
What I'm talking about really is the performative.
What do you mean by that? Sorry, like
whiteness.
You mean what Sargon said? Because people evolve over almost a decade. Yeah, exactly. I mean, Sargon has evolved. Again, for those who've maybe just joined, we look back on to see how far Sargon has come. So while we can critique and shit on him here, he is a different person in many, many ways. Not quite as far as we want him to go, but, again, we don't need to agree with everyone or side with everyone who, doesn't subscribe to the absolute ideal. But we can look back and, I think, have a bit of respect to Sargon. So someone who's put himself out there, he's admitted he's wrong, and he's even admitted himself that he himself has gone over a journey that has changed. And to maintain the audience he has, it kind of shows that his growth as a person, was in line with the audience. That's kind of the way I kind of see it. I don't think he changed the way he acts just because the way the wind was blowing. He stayed quite true to his convictions until he changed his mind. And I think it's very clear that he has evolved. He's not just lying for the sake of it.
Could you explain what white people... And you did. You said,
there are certain norms that have evolved over millennia among white people that are fundamentally different than norms for Africans, for Middle Easterners, etc.
Okay, tell me one of them.
The concept of the family. That is a fundamentally, it's actually a pagan concept in many ways, but it's a fundamentally European-derived concept.
Sorry, the concept of the family is a European concept.
Yes.
And
family has a very
Easterners and
different
Orientals don't
meaning
have
in
that.
the Middle East than it does for
I think you mean
Germans.
monogamous,
No
like
question.
monogamous nuclear family.
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously.
So what you mean the sort of 1950s America?
No,
type?
that's one expression, but that is certainly not the only one. There are precedents for that nuclear American family from the 1950s within European society. Obviously, things change, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a continuity between the past and the future, with the present being that link. The concept of what a family is fundamentally different in the African world. The idea that we want to project monogamous norms upon Africans is a expression of white privilege and Eurocentrism.
You're not really accurate.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to impose that kind of stuff on Africans as well. I mean, the reason why they pop out so many kids because you have such a low infant mortality. You know, it's in their nature to get as many kids out as possible because chances are, you know, over half are going to die before the age of 5. And this is something that Bill Gates, once again, fucked us over. There's a video out there, and Bill Gates described that he wants to essentially, you know, bring Africa up to the point where it can become middle class, meaning that if you give it enough resources to become a Western middle class nation with a, you know, a middle class, how we interpret it now, you know, Africa's population will just slow down because they will not need to have as many kids. It just misses the point. And the consequences are we've now an explosive African population, you know, and where are they all coming? They're coming here because they've got, again, well, I'm not going to go on a tangent about how Africa's fucked up, but I think you know how that story goes.
Here at all, Richard, because I mean, like, there are Amazon tribes that are
What do you not
monogamous.
understand about this?
But there are also white groups even within the same country that don't have, like, look at Mormonism. Mormonism by doctrine is polygamous. Now they don't practice it because legalism and they wanted to bow before like pressure from the U.S. government not get shot at. But they don't believe in the same nuclear family, and they're like what 99.9% white people.
Exceptions
These
prove the
aren't
rule. The other
exceptions.
thing is the Mormon practice of polygamy was a kind of evolutionary strategy for surviving this treacherous environment of
No, it was
across the
part of Joseph Smith's dogma based on what he conceived of as Elohim and his polygamous star family and all that weird shit.
Okay, well, I'll...
Monogamy is not a European concept.
Details about that. That is an exception that proves the rule. It certainly
Monogamy
did
is not
take
European.
part in the Mormon traverse of the continent. It also, you're actually mentioning this, that is a monotheistic kind of Semitic concept that shows that Semites have a very different concept of what a family is than Europeans.
And what is their concept of a family?
Semites are obviously far more polygamous in the sense of
Well, because of Islam.
biblical figures. Yes, because they evolved in a different climate, and that in order to survive, the unit of survival expressed itself in a different fashion. No question, the idea that you can find a nuclear family among the Jewish patriarchs is ridiculous. They obviously didn't practice that kind of thing.
Speaking of that, did you guys watch the Tyler Oliveira video of him essentially going into this like very Hasidic Jewish community and how they just kind of like live as parasites off the state? I mean, some of them do work, I give them that. I think there are more, they probably work more than the Somalian groups, but you know, they've embedded themselves, essentially have their religious way of life be propped up by the state. From Magibs.
You're talking about people who don't live in the usual circumstances.
So the release to his video. No, I didn't see the consequences. I knew there would be consequences, so I'll be interested to see what the fallout is.
Of a human being. You know, when you sit here
What do you
arguing,
mean, 27 or 2018?
No, Richard, do me a favor. Shut up for a second. Right? When you argue that like the life of someone like Muhammad or the other like aristocratic people surrounding him after the conquest and all this is representative of the average person. It's bafflingly out of touch, in my opinion.
So the average person the average person in the Middle East was practicing a nuclear family, but we only learn about polygamous patriarchs. Is that what you're
doesn't change
literally
the fact that
arguing?
the average person's experience was a monogamous nuclear family. Like, it's not a European innovation. Like, it's such a weird thing to say. It's so obviously disprovable. You admitted it just now.
Europeans
did you
early
say it
on,
now?
like Europeans in the sort of tribal period, they were almost all polygamous. They had sacred prostitutes. All you got to do is read some like ancient literature. They're like, oh, this. Even you look at Pompeii, you look at the graffiti there. Half of them are about somebody enjoying somebody else's wife or a hooker.
Well, when the Celts were taken to Rome, there was a Celtic woman who literally bitched out one of the Roman women, saying that, you know, we consort with the best men in public, whereas you get yourselves debauched in secret by the vilest. They were completely open about their polyamorous relationships. This is like,
What are we talking about
I
here?
think you've got like a poor.
Also, in response to the Jewish video, they tweeted a response that somewhat threateningly told them to shut up next time someone comes in with a camera. Yeah, that makes sense. I've actually made, I can't share many details, but I've contacted like a refugee charity in Scotland to essentially say that I opened the interview by saying, hey, I want to make like an interview and post on YouTube to talk about how the far right is exposing refugees, and I want to have like a chat with you about, you know, what you guys are doing, because Scotland is quite a big refugee hub. So I kind of like prefaced the email saying, you know, I want to fight against the far right. You know, I want to come in and we do an interview. We set the record straight, and they've got back to me with a potential scope of doing an actual interview. So I wanted to do any hidden cam kind of bullshit. So I'm kind of like thinking about how I'm gonna go about that. It could be quite interesting. It's interesting content because no one's really done that in Scotland. Because Scotland, places like Glasgow, I think, are like the refugee capital of the UK. So wear a disguise. People don't know who the fuck I am. It's fine. You just need to kind of not let the cover go. So I might get back to them. I might see what's up. You never know. Might be worth at least investigating. Might get a good video out of it.
Narrative here, Richard, and I don't think it holds up.
There is a deep continuity between a European conception of the family and matrimony that actually does stretch back centuries. That is what I'm
Yeah, but that
arguing.
happens everywhere.
No, it didn't happen everywhere.
Yeah, it did. You're taking the examples, the exceptions, and saying that they're the rule.
There
And
are
saying
different
that didn't
conceptions.
happen
Do
in
you,
Europe,
do
and
you
you're wrong.
acknowledge differences between different races and cultures, Sargon?
That doesn't change.
Or no, you just
monogamy isn't European innovation, Richard. Whether I do or don't, it won't make it different.
May I just say two things? Sorry about that. My internet just went down. Luckily, there's a 5-minute buffer. Just real fast. England DG just threw in $100. Holy fuck! Thank you so much, Spencer. And then I'll acknowledge. I see Millennial Wolves just jumped in. Oh, what's up, buddy?
Hello.
Just 1 second. Yo, what's up, man? Real fast, Spencer. Where would you propose your new ethno state? How would you deal with those of mixed backgrounds? And lastly, if you plan to place it within the Americas, how would you deal with the treaty concerns of the Native Americans?
Interesting questions. North America certainly would be a wonderful place for the kind of ethno-state as I've described it. There is a tremendous amount of land, much of which is unbelievably beautiful, much of which is arable, there are access to the seas, and so on. North America has certainly led to the flourishing of the United States. The fact that we were separated by oceans from Europe and so on has greatly benefited the United States. And the fact is the European continent as well could obviously be a place. I'm tempted to say that it could be anywhere. I could imagine an ethno-state in space.
Hang on,
The fact is that the question is obviously where is an important consideration. But the question of who is the primary consideration. In terms of in North America...
I'd like to
What?
come out as
Antarctica?
an Antarctica. I'm an Antarctica ethnostatist.
Yeah, Antarctica. That's a fascinating
No,
idea.
the thing is, that's actually a good point, because like what you're suggesting, Richard, I mean, that's why the white race is failing in America, isn't it? It's because America is such a bountiful land. Obviously, everyone wants to go there. I mean, Iceland isn't in any danger of seeing the white race eradicated there. Iceland is practically an ethno-state in just
clearly
defining-
is
That's
an
not
ethno
true.
state.
Sargon. That's not true. Iceland does have a lot of immigrants nowadays.
Really, what percentage?
Yeah, Iceland, even though Iceland's quite still not a high proportion of immigrants, Iceland has about 300,000 people. So I think the population of immigrants went from 15,000 to 90,000. It's not a lot of people, but in proportion to the population is huge. So demographic replacement in these countries can be way more impactful. A place like Scotland that has 5 or 6 million people, this desire to have all these new Scots come into the country. Once you get 1 million of them in, all of a sudden we're, less than 80% of the population. It goes very, very quickly. Right, I need a quick loo break, so I'll just keep this playing actually.
No, I don't know. I can't remember now. It's something like
How do you know it's not?
5%.
That's not a lot, is it?
Well, all of the
95%
Western
white isn't
world
white
is
enough
being
for you, is that what you're
all of the Western world is being transformed in a
Exactly,
way
that's the
very
point.
similar to the United States and Germany and France and all over the place.
Exactly.
So
and
why
that's
would
the
you
point.
suggest that starting it there is a good idea? I mean, it seems to be the weakest.
You're just not making
You just
there
can't
is
It
answer
doesn't
single
matter.
question
Sargon. Why are we
because
even
there's a narrative.
It doesn't even matter.
all
Sargon,
There's gonna be
it
a
doesn't-
change of consciousness.
Hang on. Look.
It's not based on
Millennial Wolves, thanks for being here.
Sergeant,
But
your points are just so
Your
annoying.
consciousness,
Guys,
Richard,
guys,
your
There's going to be
consciousness
is a
is-
fundamental
Stop
change
talking
of
white,
consciousness
everyone.
that is
You
going to
know,
give
you
power
know,
to this new order.
I will start muting you all. All right. Look, if Millennial Wolves is going to be in here, you guys can't dogpile Sargon. You have to let him respond to your questions because that's
If I do
really
that,
unfair.
then they're in trouble. Though that's the thing. He'll just
Okay,
start
well,
talking
let me
racial-
quickly address
Yeah,
the
so
Native
everyone,
American question.
Awesome. One at a time, please and thank you.
I actually I spend a lot of time still, and I've certainly spent a lot of time over the past 10 years in Montana. I have actually spent time in Indian reservations. They're nice places, but they're actually tragic places as well. I have a great deal of sympathy for the American Indians, and I hope that they stick around. I think that they have a culture. They have a heritage. They have something to give to the world. I definitely wish them the best, and I would be fine with creating a real ethno state for them, not this pale counterfeit of America, which is the refuge what reservations have become. That is, they've taken the worst aspects of America. They've taken the gamblism, the gambling, the alcoholism, which they can't process alcohol. It's a very tragic situation as Mongoloids. They've taken the worst aspects of America and they've lost many of the great aspects of themselves. I hope that they maintain the great aspects of themselves and that they really have a place that is truly Indian.
Are you suggesting we release them back into the wild?
I think what Spencer said, I missed some of it. I should have taken my headphones in. I think one of the biggest challenges the Native Americans have. It's sugar and alcohol. It sounds silly, but if you've never, we've had successive generations of people handle sugar and alcohol, and they were just given it all at once, and they, as a people, simply cannot handle it, and it has destroyed them in so many ways.
That's a really, I have to say that's a shockingly insulting
get offended.
thing to say. We're going to release them to the
On behalf
wild.
of someone
Yes,
else.
I think that there are parts of North America that should be wild. I think that's a great thing,
And the Native
I think there would be
Americans should
it would be a great place if there was a part of this world that still the white man would fear to tread. I think that's a good thing.
May I just ask Millennial Wolves, how do you
Why is
weigh
that
in?
funny?
Because you are
How do you-
literally saying release them back into the wild, Richard.
Release
That's-
them
see-
back into the wild. You are saying that. That is actually a
Richard,
shockingly
Richard.
insulting thing to say, Sargon.
Richard,
Hang on,
you-
Sticks
Richard-
And I'm not
wait,
trolling when I say that.
Richard, let
not
Sticks
trolling.
speak, and then
Yeah,
we'll
I
talk to
would
Millennial
say-
Wolves right after.
Okay, I would say, Richard, that's fine. But what about when they start raiding the convoys and stuff on the borderlands? That could become a little problem, I
We'll
guess.
fight back.
Okay.
Okay, fight back
All
so they
right,
can do.
and Millennial Wolves, how do you weigh into the conversation that is happening right now?
Oh, well, I've just been listening in, and It's been very entertaining. I think that there's a lot of pedantry going on about what is white and all that. I think it's absolutely retarded. Everyone knows what is white.
If everyone knows,
it's
why can't you just tell me? If
Well,
everyone knows, why don't you just tell me?
okay, yeah. I'll ask you. Is Lawrence Fishburne white?
That is the question that destroyed Sargon's worldview forever. Is Lawrence Fishburne white? Simple question, but a very difficult question for the classical liberal.
I don't know. Does he act white? He gets called white a lot.
No, he doesn't.
That's
Yes, he
so
does.
ridiculous.
There are.
That's
Just answer the question,
You
Sargon.
can sit there
Is
and
Lawrence
say this is
Fishburne
ridiculous,
white?
right? But you
It
are the
is.
guys. You are the ones who are saying, right, okay, you're genetically white, but you're also culturally white.
That's
You are
the
the ones.
sense of thing. It doesn't matter. Where I'm asking
That's not
you
contradictory
to answer this.
at all.
I
Yeah,
know it's
exactly.
not contradictory.
Sargon, is Lawrence Fishburne white? Is Lawrence Fishburne white?
Because what you are saying
Is
is,
Lawrence Fishburne white?
did you stop beating your wife yet? Because that's what you're doing. Listen, right?
It's not the equivalent
I
question.
have just
You're not
laid
going to
out
insult
exactly-
Lawrence Fishburne by
I think the way Sargon responded is that he was like backed into a corner. That question was like literally echoing because Millennial Wolves was repeating it, bouncing off the walls in his brain, and he had no retort. He said that his only other alternative would have been to like unplug his internet. A disconnected guy. Sorry, what were we talking about? That would be his only way to try to avoid that question, because it shatters everything that because it forces him to admit reality.
answering that question.
Listen, can you answer a single question, right? And I've asked this many times. You are
I've
saying that
answered
there's a genetic
tons of
component
questions
and a
tonight.
cultural component, and
Yes,
you
and those two
require
are
white
related,
people to live in a certain kind of way to fulfill the cultural component. Are you disagreeing with that in any way, shape, or form?
I am
disagree.
No.
I am describing white people. White people exist in a certain way that is defined genetically to a large degree. White people have a
Describe the
being.
certain way
We-
culturally they'll have to live.
I'm saying that they do inherently.
Sargon, there's a difference between
I know
descriptive
that they
and
do,
prescriptive.
Richard. I want you to
Exactly.
describe it. You have to
Sargon, do
be
you
precise.
recognize
Yeah,
that
look,
these
guys,
statements-
hang on, Jeff.
The simple question is okay. Go
I
ahead.
do not want a 3-on-1 dog pile. This is really unfair. So one person asks the question, Sargon or Styx answers it. Because if there's Richard, a Millennial Woes, and JF jumping in, that's not fair, and I'll have to start kicking people if this happens.
So,
okay?
so Styx.
I want to be fair. I want
Is
to be
Lawrence Fishburne white?
I don't know who that is.
Oh, he okay. Is Samuel
The answer's
Jackson
no,
white?
Styx, don't worry.
Is Samuel
Samuel-
Jackson white? Do you
I
know?
think this is a goal.
Oh, the answer's no, Sargon. The answer's no, Sargon. Thank you. Thank you. What
okay,
about
but how do, no, I agree with you. I agree that there are people who aren't white, Woes. I agree. But I'm talking about the ones that are white. If we can talk about them for a
We agree.
minute.
Why don't we
Hallelujah.
just-
About the ones
wouldn't
that
it
are
be
white.
Let's end the
wouldn't it be
conversation.
more wouldn't it be more worth your time to talk about people who are actually disagreed upon as to their classification? Again, it doesn't really matter even necessarily if they're an identitarian. What about someone who's like a deeply tanned Italian or a marginally white Turk or a white Mexican? There are so many people that I see within the identity.
Well, if they're,
No.
if they're
but
merely
listen,
deeply tanned, then
No,
I
there are
I'm not,
people
I
within
think
the
they're still
identitarian-
white, no matter
There-
how long they've laid.
Hey,
in that
wait,
tanning
Spencer,
bed.
please let Styx finish.
there are people within the identitarian. You may say, well, it's self-evident because of genetics or something like that. What about people other people who don't agree? Like Spence, you're talking about creating like an elite core of people to rule society. That's fine. Even they're going to have disagreements. You're going to put it up before a vote. And what if they vote in what some other group thinks is the wrong way, and they take up arms, say, no, this is getting on towards social justice warriordom. Like this Irish person isn't white, or that person they're just a shade too much melanin in their skin. How do you reconcile that
just make a
pragmatic?
point?
No, let him answer the question.
Make
man.
a
Let him
point.
answer the question.
No,
man.
I'll
Come
give
on.
the floor to Millennial Was.
Can I just make a point, right? Because this thing about the Irish used to be regarded as not white and now they're regarded as white and all this. Does anyone seriously believe that one day sub-Saharan Africans, are going to be regarded as white?
That's a pointless question. We're talking about white.
That misses the point, though. That's not the point. Is people who are not agreed upon at any given time. It doesn't matter if we retrospectively say, well, it was obvious at the time they were
It's
just
separate.
dumb. It doesn't really matter.
Look, in the 1790
But I'm asking
Immigration
whether
Act.
that is true. Sorry, you go.
I didn't hear that.
Well, I'll actually give it back to Colin there. He was asking a good question.
Yeah.
Well, the point is, of course, we can talk about the edge cases, the Turks and all that. But I think the crucial thing is, Sargon is asking us to define white people, and I'm saying this is self-evident.
not.
I said this
No,
to
I'm
Sargon
not.
2 years ago.
That's a
Oh, really?
misrepresentation of what I've said.
Well, do it then. Go be clearer.
I've literally said this multiple times, but you guys, as soon as I start making a specific argument, a specific distinction,
do it. Come
you
on,
turn
just-
off your
just do
brains.
it.
Okay, well, calm down and listen. You have white people as a genetic distinct group, right? And then you have the culture that you envisage them producing.
And this is I guess, a failure to realize that I think, culture is inseparable from race. Culture's downstream from race. It's the end moment coming. Do you know the exact kind of time of it? Can you tell me if we're at 2 hours, 44 seconds? Whereabouts exactly? If it's coming, I want to be ready for it. Because I think he says you're acting like a bunch of... That doesn't give me much time to... ideas, let it rock. We'll just have to...
So do you think that we think...
No, don't
that
ask me
white people
questions. I'm
like
still
white culture?
getting to this.
No,
I
I'm
just
going
want
to
to
ask
know
you
if I'm
questions.
representing
I'm
your
sick of you
beliefs.
interrogating me every time we
Am
talk.
I representing your beliefs accurately, yes or no?
Answer.
I'm not sure what you're saying. I'm not sure what
I'm
you're saying.
saying that
Do you think? Do you? Oh God! Do you think, Sargon, that I think that
Don't
white
ask
people
me
who
a
don't behave
question,
white
just
people?
answer my question.
No, I am going to ask you a question. You always do this, and it's not right.
Because
you
I'm trying
always
to
try
get to the bottom of what you
interrogate me
actually
and get me
believe.
to-
But you
You're right, he is. I think this is it coming up. Guys, we need to kind of skip along, maybe like 10 minutes, maybe? Would that save us? It might not be coming. Again, this could be the ebb and flow of the conversation. It might settle down again a bit, then rise up again, and then get really heated again, and that's when they say it. I could always trim it out, but I like to avoid... Cough loudly. Turn on the YouTube captions. Well, I think I've got the stream settings where captions probably can't be turned on right now, because I've put on like ultra low latency, so captions shouldn't be available.
seem afraid of your own principles.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
Yes,
no,
I
I'm
actually
not.
am.
I'm not in the slightest
I
bit.
absolutely am.
Guys,
I absolutely am. But you guys
I'm
are afraid of
interested.
answering these questions because you know.
Gotchas.
Oh,
that
wait,
they're
I'm
look,
not
look,
interested.
wait, guys, this is turning into a fucking shit show.
There's a shit show.
We need to find where.
Okay, let's get
more of those
leading,
questions in the crowd.
because, yeah, you know what? Fuck this thing.
Yeah, it's like descending into madness, this sort of like debate. It was a bit more kind of like back and forth, but now it's a bit more... Yeah, it's getting heated. It's just when I think there's too many people involved. Too many people kind of want to say what they need to say. I think a 2v2 is really the extent of what a debate should be. Anything more and it's way, way too messy. It just becomes like Piers Morgan, just rage bait, panel show, pish.
Let's just move on.
Oh, so some of these people have paid
just
money.
Before we move on,
All right.
Some of these
all right,
people have
look.
paid money in the super chat, and I think we should get to their
Yeah,
questions.
you care about those people, Richard. I know you're such
I
a
will,
giving
I will
person.
simply answer to Sargon because he did ask a question and no one really answered, but I understood Sargon's question.
All right, please
Your
answer
answer,
Sargon's
Sargon,
question. Thank you.
is no, you do not represent their belief correctly because you mix the prescriptive with the descriptive. What Richard has been saying for more than 2 hours now is that first, there is a race. That race is defined by facial characteristics, skin color, genetics, etc. Whatever criteria you want to use, it's a set of embedded criteria, and some of them are better if you have the data, but some of them are also more accessible. On the other end, he says, I see this group of people and I can describe it. He's not prescribing a form of
Okay.
culture. He's saying,
Okay.
I see something in these people.
Okay, and this is the crucial thing that I'm trying to drive at, and I thank you for being able to actually answer that, because as soon as you characterize and codify this group of people, and then you make this group of people, you give them rights, you imbue them with an existence beyond the actual group themselves, then you do become prescriptive. then you're going to end up getting people going, you're not being white enough, you're not acting white, you're or whatever the white equivalent of an Uncle Tom's going to be. That's exactly what we see in the black community.
I think he's about to say, I feel like he's building this up to drop it here. He's getting ready. He's warming up, honestly. He's revving his racial engine here. It's about to lash out.
That's entirely my problem with identitarianism. It
So the
becomes
problem
just
then
like this.
So then we should just race mix.
See, exactly. That is not what the the alternative to what I'm saying.
Because
That is absolutely not what I'm saying, Colin.
It actually is, and you've said several
it's
times that you
not.
wouldn't care if the white race disappeared. So I think this is
now
clearly
you're
where
telling
you're
me how
getting
offended you
towards.
are. I hope the white race disappears.
I'm not
tomorrow, Colin,
offended.
now. I hope it
I'm not
disappears,
offended.
just evaporates.
You
I think
do
it's
hope
the
so. Are you
most
being
progressive
serious,
force in the
Sergen?
history of the planet. What now?
English. You're just
Yes,
Are you
I
being
am, because
serious,
you're
Sergen?
being-
He is like, he's trying to like lash out in a way, isn't he? He's trying to like just, I don't know. I feel like he's just grasping at straws, trying to make a point where it is a bit of a shame in a way, because it is turned into a bit of a dog pile, and it must be quite a tricky situation to be in. But he's trying to put all his cards on the table here, and he's not got anything to show for it.
being childish. You're
Okay.
like,
No,
I'm asking you.
All right,
you are
let's
proposing-
go to
guys,
the
look,
let's
so,
go to the crowd.
And
Here's
your
the thing is,
alternative
you guys-
is what the white race needs to die then. That's not what I'm
So-
saying. I'm
so
just
obviously,
saying we can
obviously on this
cannot
point,
continue.
obviously on this point, you guys won't agree. So let's just move on to the next thing. Nicholas Kraft, $50. Thank you. Question for Spencer: why are you so reluctant to discuss how your ethno-state and ideology match up to the political theories and writing? You dismiss Sargon when he brings up Loki's writing.
Loki's writing, fuck's sake.
Why can't your views be challenged by principles?
Because we're not
I
built on
actually
principles.
like the writings of Loki. He was a great philosopher.
means
John Locke, I'm not a great fan of.
Don't be a dick.
Oh shit! I fucked that up.
I was making a joke.
It's okay, man.
My
It's
bad.
okay.
My bad. Look, yeah, Locke. Sorry. The E always fucks me up.
Give him a break. He's not the one making the argument.
Hey,
I'm
look,
just
it's a
joking
lot to
around.
take in right now, okay?
Oh,
and
wow.
you are talking to a slightly retarded moderator here, okay?
You're not
retarded. Oh, thanks, Spencer. Tune in, drop out, $25. Increased complexity, higher consciousness in a group preferences prioritized on race is a lower ordered consciousness. Jesus Christ, this is a weird question. Evolution converging, and what will emerge? We'll see racially diverse. Okay, I'm sorry. This question, tune in, drop out. There's a lot going on there, but thank you for donating. Nicholas,
He just gave up.
Sorry, Faisal N, $50. Holy shit, thank you. You always compare yourself to the rest of the world, having an ethno state, but none of them are like you.
You've asked that one.
We already asked that.
Shit,
one.
sorry.
What
like,
happened to the one
I'm gonna
about
copy and
Loki?
paste
I
that.
want to know the answer to that one.
Yeah, all right. So
How's this guy managing to keep a show together?
that one was a question
He's a
for
trickster
Spencer. Why are you reluctant to discuss how your ethno-state and ideology match up to political theories and writing? You dismiss Sargon when he brings up Locke's writing. Why can't your views be challenged by principles?
What I was saying is that Sargon was living in an abstract realm where he was saying, "Oh, the state in Locke's conception should be created in order to protect the inalienable rights of each individual." What I'm living in an abstract realm, I want to think descriptively and phenomenologically. No state has ever arisen in order to protect the rights of individuals.
Your
That
state
is a-
arose for that.
So described by Thomas Jefferson, it actually did not arise in that way at all. It arose due to blood and iron and amazing risk
Alright,
takers who were
Bismarck.
willing to forfeit their entire existence in order to create independence. It was created through blood and iron. Period. It was created through a
That's
war.
dumb. That's so stupid. It was founded
if
as
the
on a
rebels
philosophy.
lost that
It was founded as a state of ideas. It's just, again, I think Spencer's just. It's hard to just argue against Spencer in this whole thing. I think he's what's the expression these days? He's going off. He's definitely going off here.
war, the United States would simply not exist in its current form.
Yeah, but you don't understand the founding of your own country. It was founded on philosophy.
Yeah, I've read. It was. Yeah,
You've ignored it.
I've
I
read
think.
Jefferson
I agree.
Sargon.
You don't seem to understand it. Like, and you sit there going, "Well, blood and iron." Oh my god!
I don't. I understand it in a sense.
If you have Somalians absolutely destroying your country or destroying a state through scams, I don't think philosophy really, really matters in that respect.
That I don't buy into it as, and thus Jefferson invented America when he penned the Declaration of Independence. No, that was a legitimizing function. He was trying to appeal to social mores. He was trying to appeal to Enlightenment philosophers of his age. Did the United States actually arise in that kind of vacuum in which individuals came together in order to protect their own rights? Obviously not. That was a way of justifying
Magic
a
soil.
very bloody and long war against
no,
the
that's not
homeland.
true at all. The whole point is it's not in a vacuum. It comes in because of the Enlightenment, the intellectual revolution of Europe accumulates in the United States of America.
Because there was a legitimacy crisis in the 18th century in which claiming what else was Jefferson going to do? The United States itself was facing a legitimacy crisis where they had to seek a new form of legitimacy. They could not seek older forms of legitimacy of being a colony of Britain. They were picking up on currents, philosophical currents of the day, and that is why they describe the state as such. That doesn't mean that is actually how sovereignty is created.
No, you don't understand. Like these ideas.
If social justice warriors went to
Richard,
war,
please let Sargon respond.
The whole point, Richard. Well, I mean, read Common Sense by Thomas Paine. That is like you can see exactly. They know what they're doing.
Bro, just read this book. That'll totally undo your principles. Just read this book, bro. Don't worry about it.
With the American Revolution, I mean, he sits there and plans out like the tonnage of the ships required and the materials required to build these in order to put these values into practice. Like the idea that you think this is a retroactive thing is just wrong.
No, it was an attempt to legitimize actions that were taken that were political actions.
The ideas came first, the actions came second.
Oh, so they read philosophy and then they decided to create the United States.
That's exactly how it worked.
Keep dreaming.
Have you read Common Sense by Thomas Paine? Have you read any of these things?
Yes.
And how can you sit there and say that that's not the case?
Because I don't buy into this fairy tale of Americanism, which you unfortunately do.
I get it.
Denial of a fairy tale, yes.
If you want, but that doesn't make them not true.
Both of you will disagree. Woes, did you want to weigh in?
I think it's absurd to suggest that the people fighting that war, the majority of them understood the philosophical underpinnings. I think there were far more real-world motivations there.
By the way, we just hit number one.
The majority aren't required to understand it.
Number one worldwide. This is amazing.
We're number one worldwide right now. All right, Styx, do you want to weigh in?
Oh no, I've got nothing to say on that one.
All right, cool. So Min NSMH 20 pounds. Richard, you say out of one side of your mouth that liberalism is all idealistic fantasy, while your position is a pragmatic. Then out of the other, when you start talking about your ethno-state, you talk purely about your ideals.
Okay, that's an interesting statement. This is how I would answer that.
Yeah, if people want different game, I'll try investigate other games off stream, because what I want to do is have picture in picture. Doesn't always work with certain games, where you can have the YouTube kind of little box over things. Some games do not like that at all. Warcraft works fine. Maybe Half-Life might be alright with it. I'll figure that out next stream.
I don't think liberalism is a good way of understanding social order or sovereignty. That is the foundation of a state. And so when Sargon says, oh, this is what governments are about, he's basically saying, haven't you read Common Sense? Haven't you read John Locke? Because in this abstract world, that is what governments are about. I am saying that this is what governments are really about.
You have
there is no doubt force involved. There is no doubt rivalry and power relations involved, no question. Now, when I talk about the ethno-state, yes, it is inherently idealistic. It's not liberal, but it is inherently idealistic in the sense of this is, there are ethno-states that exist today that could be protected, yes, But my conception of an ethnostate is something to shoot for. It is something that should be a telos, a great goal that we channel our actions towards.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of describing it. You know, we need to have ideals. I mean, beauty is an ideal. If you look yourself in the mirror, you're not going to see a perfect specimen. But you know what real beauty is. So trying to aspire to have that in every way in your life, because it's the highest good in many, many ways. Just because something is unattainable doesn't mean we should disregard it. That's kind of like, that's why when you see the left, it's obsessed with the ugly, the fat, the degenerate, body positivity, not being satisfied with being a man or a woman, you know, just gender amorphous blob of humanity. That's why when you look at them, they're always ugly and really, really just, you know, the art they produce is hideous as well. Because real beauty takes patience, it takes skill, it takes, you know, in terms of, you know, a beautiful person, it takes good genetics. And so some of these things, you know, you can never actually ever attain them. So rather than striving towards something you can never achieve for a greater goal, the opposite is what we see today, which is to destroy everything that is sacred, that is good, that is beautiful, because it just brings everything, and I mean everything, to the lowest common denominator.
So I agree. It is interesting to think about pragmatism and idealism, but there's no fundamental contradiction in terms of what I'm saying.
What you're saying is no different to what I'm saying. You just disagree with the goal.
That makes sense.
No, that's not what
Yes,
I just
Richard,
said
every
very
time you
clearly.
pause for
Do you
a
want me to
long time
reiterate
and say
myself,
no.
Sargon?
I think it's evident.
We have to say things like 10 times for you to understand them.
No, Richard, it's obvious to everyone you don't understand what I'm saying. It's really obvious.
No, it
Your
isn't.
long pauses.
Sargon.
It's not.
Just come
Sargon,
on, man.
it's
Stop
not.
trying to be a dick.
Sargon, I am
really
sorry. You're going to
speak.
find this insulting. You think that you are more intelligent than you are, and that is
Are
a
you a
difficult
mind
place
reader
for you
now?
to.
That is a fucking awful thing to say to someone. If someone said that to me, I mean, it's probably true in many, many ways, but if I'm having a debate with somebody, and I'm being kind of outclassed, and I can feel it, and then they say that to me, that would sting big time. That would be one of the worst insults ever. That would be like, anyone watch like that Rehab Room videos? That would be like if Rehab Room called me like an oofy doofy or something like that. I couldn't recover from that.
To be.
God,
I'm describing reality. I'm describing this experience with you.
You're telling me what I think. So what color? Come on.
Oh, give me a break.
Sargon.
That.
No, don't give you. You just told me what I think. I don't know. What
I
you
didn't
think.
tell you what you
but I'm
think.
interested.
I said you have a conception of your intellectual abilities that are greater than reality, and that is a difficult place for
literally
any human
do
being
not
to
know
be.
anything.
That is my description of you, Sargon, and I am sorry,
You
but I
are
have to be
wrong
honest to
on
you, and
all
you
of
should actually
these
thank
things,
me for
and
being
you're
so honest.
demonstrably wrong, and you are resorting to.
Even that's just so funny. It's like, listen, I've insulted you in front of thousands of people. You need to thank me because I was being honest. That's why Spencer's funny in this debate. You gotta admit.
An ad hominem attack because you know you have no answers.
No, that's not. Both of you are being unfair.
I've
I mean,
answered
let's
your
just
question
move
a
on.
million times.
Yeah,
Sargon.
yeah.
I'm asking him about his
Let's move on.
ideology, and then he attacks me personally
Yeah,
with a character or.
yeah, fair enough.
My simple experience of being with
Yes,
you,
Fred,
Sargon.
yeah.
I have answered your
Again,
questions.
another
I'd like
answer.
to-
You
No
actually
need.
speak to the issues, Richard.
I would
Are you
like to
capable of
What
summarize.
have you been doing for the past 2.5 hours?
No, you haven't. You've been
Look,
ducking and
look,
diving,
look.
everything to avoid talking
I
about
would like
Everyone,
to summarize.
honestly, we could bitch about this the whole time, but JF, what did you want to say?
Yeah, I just want to summarize here the discussion, which is a very interesting one, but it's getting blurred into the yelling and the talking over. It's a beautiful question whether IDs drive societies forward or other mechanism, more complex, more. As a biologist, I'm interested, for example, in genes, and I'm interested in evolution, and who kills who, and who survives, and who makes babies with who. This
With who?
is a very interesting question. I don't have a
who?
super strong stance. I do tend to side with Richard and Medina Woes. I don't think that IDs drive societies forward as much as we think. I think that there are other processes at play, emotional, psychological, the reality of killing in a war, and the reality of reproducing, the reality of rape, and whatever happens during these wars. I think those are forces that drive in a way that is not captured by Sargon's statement, in my appreciation of it.
Because, like, Leonard Peikoff points out that ideas are like the motor of history. They're the thing that begins all of the suffering, all of the change.
And then that's where
I mean, that sounds profound, but it really isn't. Ideas are the things that make everything. I mean, wow. Really fucking insightful.
I agree with
said it,
Richard.
so-
It's like you shouldn't buy it necessarily, and you should look at the reality, the empirical reality of the world, and see maybe these ideas are just they're kind of secondary effect. They appear as part of one of the consequences of deeper processes.
Yeah.
Why do we assume, though, that it's necessarily an either-or scenario? Because the biology, ultimately, the biological composition is going to affect the ideology in a situational sense.
That I
The
fully
ideology then feeds back in. I'm not exactly sure why that would be of particular importance when the major issue with identitarianism, the same as it would be with any ideology, fundamentally is pragmatism, whether it works or not. Like communism on paper is fine, and in practice it can never actually be implemented. It's impossible.
Somebody says Sargon won. Maybe not in this debate, but see over a long enough time frame. This was 2018, so what are we now? Like 9 years later? Who's really winning in the end? I mean, if we measure up success and who has actual, who has an actual sway in the modern discourse, Sargon has came out. I don't think Spencer ever recovered from Charlottesville. I don't think he ever managed to kind of understand what to do afterwards.
Well, this is the
Six
question,
is
though. Like,
right.
why is it that white people, Asian people, and Africans have all been attracted to communism if ideas don't hold a certain power?
That's
Well, of course, the idea is hold a
interesting.
certain power. Yeah.
Okay.
What Styx was saying is absolutely right. I mean, ideas and genetics are connected in a kind of feedback mechanism where what ideas we have, because remember, it's not just communism. The Chinese had a particular kind of communism that's fundamentally different than Russian communism, fundamentally different than the SJW stuff we see in white America and so on.
Yeah, that's what I was covering in the ideology tier list when we were speaking about Maoism. Maoism compared to Stalinism, we put as kind of mid compared to Stalinism, which was kind of based. I don't remember how we rationalized or justified that, but the list didn't really make any sense. So the less I talk about it, the less likely I am to expose myself for just really making everything up as we went along on the last stream.
So there's a kind of feedback mechanism between high ideals and then also history. And so Russian communism was, the creation of a Jew writing tracts in the London Library. But at the same time, it was fundamentally Russian, and it inherited the structures of the Russian Empire. It inherited many other political aspects of the Russian Empire of the past. You could say the similar things about the American experience. There were, no question, Enlightenment ideals that were embedded in this transition to a new order. At the same time, it was a fundamentally Anglo-Saxon Protestant order that was created in the United States. So these things are kind of embedded within each other. And this is why the study of history, when done properly, not done dryly, but done properly with an understanding of psychology and emotion and passion and ideas, can be such a rich experience.
Yeah, but you're not demonstrating that that's like a genetic connection. You're just saying there's an existing culture, and therefore, I mean, and even then, I honestly, from a liberal perspective, the difference between Russian and Chinese communism is really fucking small and almost irrelevant.
No, it's not.
Yeah, definitely disagree with that. Just by the fact they are completely different types of people. So they're going to, I guess, even if you look at European nations, each of us are a, Western democracy, quote unquote, but we'll all have a different style of doing it. And that's inherent because we are just a different people. So the idea that it's minuscule, the differences between Chinese communism and the Soviet Union, It's just, again, it's seeing it through the lens that because it's collectivism, it all has the same result, which it does in some ways, but I mean, just compare the Chinese to the Soviets. It's it's similar, but a very different flavor. Same thing with Cambodia.
It absolutely
the difference
is.
between
Millions
the
still
difference
end up dead
between
either way.
Khrushchev and Mao is actually, that's ridiculous.
Sargon, you're conflating. I would say this. That's a difference between the ultimate effects versus like the pure doctrine. It's like within religion, the same thing happens on that one.
I have
in
a question.
culture, it's
The
existing
doctrine isn't as
culture
great as you
is
think.
racially defined.
I don't think it's particularly. It's not
Existing
outlandishly
culture is
different.
racially defined.
I have a
I mean,
question.
there's a particular
Oh, sorry,
Christianity. I mean, like Christianity is this, Jewish and Near Eastern.
Sorry to interrupt. Someone said Chinese state is fascist, if anything. I would disagree. The way I interpreted fascism, which I discussed in the last stream, was China today is not fascist because if it was fascist, it would try to revive what it was of the Chinese Empire. But it wants really nothing to do with that in any way. It still kind of like disregards its own history. Fascism is looking back to the past, looking back to Rome, encapsulating the ideas, the aesthetics, the imagery, the kind of the metaphysics of it, and bringing that forward, and then reworking it into a modern model. That is fascism. It's bringing the past to the present. It doesn't necessarily need to be authoritarian, but the past, by its very definition on how civilizations were organized, had very authoritarian elements in it. This is where it's difficult to kind of differentiate between the two.
religion that was taken into Europe and was paganized and Europeanized to the point that it became something fundamentally different. Even root concepts like incarnation, the Holy Spirit, and Trinitarianism were not original actually to the Judaic faith. And so it became something else when it was impacted with existing racial and cultural realities. This is what's so fascinating about history. It's not some easy puzzle that you put together. It's actually rich and
I'm aware of
complex
that.
and can't be described in a simplistic way.
What would I label the Chinese today? They're very similar to the West. They just don't really, they just don't care and how, social credit scores. We're going to be slowly implementing something very similar. We're just going to be labeled as something that's a bit more palatable to the rest of the public. We essentially have the same kind of like system of doing things. They just have the one party state. We just have the same party, but 3 different brands of the same thing. So it can't get anything done. The Chinese at least can get stuff done, even if it means at the expense of, probably slightly more corruption than what we have. These cities been built out of nowhere, these ghost cities and stuff being built out of paper. But at the same time, they're building thousands of miles of motorways when we can't build a train from Birmingham to Manchester. It's costing us, we'll just look up the HS2 debacle in the UK. We just can't seem to build anything.
Yeah, but you don't explain how culture can be so radically different when the genes are effectively the same.
Yeah, one party versus uniparty. That's right.
I have a question here. Look, I know I have more serious questions as well, but I can't ignore a silly question when someone donates $200. Holy fuck. Wow. Vulcan
Are you going to pass some of this cash on to us for like some whiskey money or something?
Sorry,
I might make
have
you mad.
as a Jew, is it, Richard?
We'll see what happens at the end. Yeah, after I tally all this shit up, $200 fucking dollars.
Just for that joke, so we're going to forget all the rest of your transgressions. That was very good.
It wasn't a joke. No, I'm joking.
$200. Okay, on a scale of 1 to gay, how gay are traps, and will they be allowed in your ethno state?
Traps are gay. Yes. Will there be transsexuals in the ethno state? Hopefully not. I'm sure within any kind of social order, there's going to be some deviance. I think actually Jean-Marie Le Pen said that deviancy is like a spice or a salt. If you have a little bit of a spice with a meal, it adds flavor. But if you overwhelm a meal with salt or spice, you ruin the entire meal.
That's a very good metaphor, actually, because I'm sure a lot of us are on the sort of like right-wing tradcon sort of like, you know, sphere, wherever you want to call it or label it. We're probably very anti-homosexual and trans in many ways. You know, we don't want them kind of raising kids. We don't want them marching down the street to be prideful in what they are. But in the same time, it's kind of like, if you kind of put enough shame on certain behaviors, these behaviors become underground. Are we really going to go out of our way to kind of destroy it? Because that actually does result in proper authoritarianism. These sort of ideas and sort of lifestyles need to be shamed to the point that no one would ever want to exercise them, and especially not share it in public. But he raises a good point where the most kind of eccentric artists, those who push kind of boundaries in a good way, tend to be of that kind of persuasion, sometimes, of course. So having these elements pushing the boundaries of certain things can be, trying to phrase this in a good way, it can be beneficial, and I think that's the wrong word to use, but it's just a part of society that needs to be kind of like admitting it exists, but not putting it on a pedestal to be proud of. Does that make sense? It's again, I think what Spencer said, having that tiny little element of spice, you know, it's part of our humanity in a way. There's going to be that 1 or 2% of people, probably 1%, who actually believe and behave like that. It's just what we have now, because the projection and acceptance and the pride, it is in turn destroying society, because that has been placed as the highest good, as opposed to lost my train of thought, but I'm going somewhere with that.
And
So
in
dicks
even
are
the
salt.
what traps
Dicks
are
are salt.
Yeah, so look, in any kind of society, there's going to be a little bit of deviancy, but if it overwhelms society, if there's not a core decency to society, it collapses, and that's what we're seeing now.
I can't believe you answered that very seriously. Thank you. Pastor Gator Coot, $5. In the interview with David Pacman, Spencer says Iranians are more white than Jews. What the fuck, Richard?
Well, Iranians are Persians. Actually, the word Iran is another form of the root word Aryan. So there's no question that there is a genetic continuity between Europeans and Persians. Obviously, we have a major historical discontinuity. I mean, it is a fundamentally different historical experience.
Are you
but
suggesting that you agree
certainly
with Adolf
Persians.
Hitler's Aryan Germans?
What?
Is that? I'm not actually aware of any genetic continuity between Western Europeans and the Persians. Can you?
Iran literally means land of Aryans, doesn't it? Iran is Aryan, land of Aryan.
You send me a source on that afterwards, or something like that.
Sure, I'll send you a source.
Yeah, I'm very
afterward.
interested.
But yes, Aryanism is a real concept. I mean that.
Oh, I know that
thought you
there
were
are
reading
Aryans
Mein
as an ethnic group, yeah, but I didn't realize they made it to Germany.
What?
That was retarded.
I don't
next question.
even
Sorry,
I heard the fucking tumbleweed during that joke.
I'm just teasing.
grasp what you're saying.
I would like to see the studies that you've got there. That genuinely does sound interesting.
All right, Lucius Wagner, $5. Question for Spencer: will white Muslims be allowed in your state? I think I know the answer to that one. And
Absolutely
what about?
not.
No.
They're not being white correctly. You don't understand.
And what
This is
about?
what I'm
White,
talking about when I say that there's going to be a cultural aspect that you're going to have to enforce.
Yes, and I've said yes,
and you can't.
That's one of the
define it.
things that we will enforce.
Yeah, but okay,
look,
but not being
I
Muslim
am
is one
actually
of them.
pretty. I am myself a kind of tragic agnostic.
India or Pakistan? Well, which one I'd rather live in, or which one I'd rather destroy first? Because the answer's
I
the same.
don't want there to be intramural wars of religion within the white race. And if white people within the ethnic state want to be Protestant or Catholic, then I would encourage them to be that. I do not want
but
any
Spencer,
viable of a war of
Spencer,
religion.
can I,
Let me finish.
Andy, can I please? Can
yes,
I weigh
Stick,
in?
please, stick.
Just-
Yes.
Yeah, but one of the
I'm about to
reasons
get
why
the Muslims.
one of the reasons why you want identitarianism is because you'd be like, well, if people are mixed together, it can cause violence and cause problems, lack of continuity and breakdown and degeneracy. What about differences between other things people find important, like a religion? Not just banning Islam, but would you have like a state religion maybe?
I hear you. I'll actually address this interesting question. Islam is fundamentally different. It's fundamentally different. Being a Muslim is fundamentally different than, say, a white person being a Buddhist, because Islam is a black flag raised against Europe. And adopting Islam really is adopting the religion of the invader and the conqueror. So that is simply a no-no, whereas a white eccentric who gets into Buddhism, who cares? And I certainly don't want intramural fights between Christians.
Why doesn't that matter? Because, I mean, if we're conquering them and we adopt their religion, then that's okay. But if they come and conquer us and we adopt their religion...
Buddha was an Aryan, by the way, but...
What about, though, if a sect within Buddhism or anything else were to arise that became like that? Or what if there was a group within Islam, like the Alawite maybe, who are like, we don't really care about the
Right, maybe we would allow the Alawites in as some exception because they're highly civilized. Yeah, I get your point.
And what if someone within
I'm going to address it. I'm going to address it.
What if?
Many white nationalists...
How many cigarettes was Millennial Woe smoking back then? Because when he interviewed me, he wasn't smoking at all. I think he's off this now. He's off it.
Point to Christianity as a source of continuity and commonality for the white race. And to a very large degree, they are right. But they're also, to a degree, wrong. The fact is, Christianity has also been a source of extreme divisions and bloodshed within the white race. That's something that we have to think about. What was it? 50% of Bohemia was slaughtered during the wars of religion. The fact is, white people can assiduously kill one another over doctrinal differences that no one can remember anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the fact that the Northern Irish and Irish will fight and kill each other in the street over the same religion, just a different brand of it. But we can have, millions of Africans in. There's going to be no cultural upset whatsoever. Millennial Woes moved to the vape. My brother did the same, actually. He had to go back to cigarettes because he was vaping so hard. He's like vaping in his bed because you can get away with it. So he started to smoke cigarettes again because that involves you, the whole kind of performative ritual, going outside, lighting it, smoking in the rain. But when he's on the vape, he just, relentless. And I have some friends actually who never smoked cigarettes, and then one day, it's as if they just went into the shop one day and thought, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna get addicted to nicotine today, and they just vape relentlessly now. There's like no reason why they did it. They just decided to be addicted to nicotine. You could say it's based. Tucker Carlson loves nicotine, but luckily I've avoided that.
So the fact is, religion can be a source of conflict. One thing that I have noticed, and just looking at this descriptively or phenomenologically, is that these divisions within Christianity don't create the kind of divisive bloodshed that they have in the past. The fact is,
come on,
Catholics and Protestants are at each other's throats. You can find places where they are, obviously. Those are obvious enough, particularly people living in the United Kingdom. But the fact is, as a whole, religion, within the white race, religion is not the source of conflict that it was. I think that is a very good thing. The fact is, we are becoming a more secular society. Now, Styx raised an intriguing possibility of should there be a kind of state religion. I disagree fundamentally with this notion of there's a separation of a church and state, and that religion is just a private matter. It's some personal thing that we do on weekends or something. I think that is a inherently naive conception of what religion is. And actually, religion and the state are intimately connected, historically speaking. And religion gives legitimacy to the state and vice versa. So actually, this is an intriguing question I don't have a simple answer to, but could a state have legitimacy in this forum without a religious background. Now, we Americans might like to say, "Oh, we're a secular society" and whatever. That's not really true. There was an Anglo-Saxon Protestantism and a white Christianity, which was effectively the state religion of America. We could say, "Oh, you could be whatever you want," but that just meant that you were some denomination of Protestant or maybe a Catholic. So there are state religions. And this is actually a very serious topic that if we were to have an ethno-state, we would have to think about seriously. Is there going to be that theological basis of legitimacy for the social order?
So I guess you'd have to have
Something
multiple ethno-states then. Sorry.
Probably. Yeah, I mean, this is something I think is very important to mention. The fact that, because we were saying earlier that, yeah, whites can argue about this and that and have wars and kill each other in large numbers. Yes, that's all true. That does not mean that we shouldn't have an ethno-state. That does not mean that we shouldn't separate by race.
Well, you're not going to have
the
one.
fact that we can disagree over religion, culture, politics, whatever, does not mean it's together. That's just silly.
Okay.
No state religion. What do you guys think of a state religion? I mean, because if you don't have a religious ideal to potentially hold society together, people may say, well, you have the racial element, but because race is inherently spiritual in some ways, you're going to need some sort of higher metaphysics to kind of keep things together. So, Christian and pagan only. I mean, I guess we could have a blend of that. That would be... Because if you think about, like, do I have the thing here? Now, I've got this, like, little Celtic cross, and people forget the Celtic cross, the normal kind of crucifix with a circle around it. The circle was a sort of the pagan symbol of the sun. And so when they tried to spread Christianity, they were like, just fucking blend it together. Because they very easily blended together because they have very, I guess, things that could easily mold from one into the other. Because I'm a bit of a believer of a kind of perennialist view of different religions. I wouldn't say they're all equally interesting and all equally have something good to say, but there's different strands that we can intertwine. I'm probably not my expertise though. I'm afraid to really go into that.
You say, like, let's mix all the races. No one's in favor of that.
A lot of people are.
No, well, hold on a second.
Oh,
hold on a second, Sargon. I know it's not.
No one's advocating.
I know that it's not. Yeah, I know. What I'm saying is that the opposite of an ethno-state, or not having an ethno-state, means fundamentally that eventually white people will cease to exist. I mean, eventually.
All right, so
Of course
I'm
it
gonna
does.
take just 3 minutes here, real quick. JF's gonna ask the questions. Woes, when I'm back, I'm gonna have to kick you if that's cool, just so it's more balanced.
I am going to fill up the old glass of whiskey, so I will be
Not a
back
problem.
in 1 minute.
Nice, a little break. I'm not going to be able to finish this entire video. I think I need to kind of get off right about just before 4. I'm going out later, so I need to kind of wrap things up. But I do quite like this sort of, finding these kind of older streams to go through, because they are quite interesting, because people do look back on these in some way. So it's kind of good to look back on them together, in a sense, where we can all kind of see, because this was a very iconic, I wouldn't say pivotal, or maybe it is pivotal in some ways, because this 2018, I was getting kind of red-pilled. I knew the race question already. I was still kind of liking a bit of, I was starting to dislike Ben Shapiro, but still kind of like Peterson as well, and I was going in the right direction, but when I'm watching this really kind of shifted me to, because Sargon was arguing from a classical liberal stance, which I was still not held back, or maybe you could argue held back, but I was still very much sympathetic to. And this definitely opened my eyes in many ways that what Spencer was coming out with was, even if you don't agree with it fully, it definitely breaks down and kind of shatters the classical liberal worldview that so many people at the time would still fall back on as the way things should be, which classical liberalism is it's another way of saying civic nationalism. That is the ultimate kind of enemy in a way, isn't it?
So everyone can take a break if they want. And
Yeah.
on my side,
Yeah, if everyone wants to say like 3 minutes, just so, and then we'll
do
do
it.
a little bit more. All right.
That's probably a good way to cut it. We missed the M-bomb. They're having a nice break. If I was to play more, we might push it. So I don't need at least don't need to edit the stream by removing that. So my heart can rest easy. But what other stream? Because what other? Let me still bear with me. Let me see if I can find. Because this was a great debate. Let me remove this. This is what we might do another day.
The children, they should be taken care of, not in these sorts of positions. So
Baby Nick Fuentes. You guys remember this one? Oh, where's the picture-in-picture? Where is it? Let's move it here. Guys, remember this stream?
I also think it has something to do with the dynamic when you genitalia, reproduction organs. No, we believe that men and women in their distinctions have different capacities and
Why has
therefore
that
different
been lost?
functions.
But anyways, this is a great one.
You must necessarily
Sargon comes across pretty well in this one, actually, from my memory. I remember watching this one way back in the day. This was really, really good. I remember Asmongold was really good as a moderator. Asmongold was really, really good. Nick, what year was this? What year was this? "2019." Because Fuentes was sort of kicking about. Because I remember watching some of Nick Fuentes' old stuff back in 2018. He did very early streams. I think he was on YouTube actually. I think he got banned after the stream. Yeah, this guy, Richard IV, I'd recommend watching. If you want like UK updates, Richard IV is pretty good, I'd say, for like kind of keeping update on kind of British politics and kind of, you know, he's documenting the decline. I like his channel. It's a sort of channel I could never do. The sort of the daily videos, which talking about, I wouldn't say the same thing, but that kind of like aspect, I couldn't do that. But I like that he does. Somebody needs to do that. What else? Yeah, the meme misses watching Jerma. I like old school wrestling stuff. I like early 2000s wrestling is based. Do I enjoy Dankula? Yeah, I've always liked Count Dankula back in the day. I was he just makes great content. I like his Mad Lad stuff. It's always very good. I don't really watch much of his kind of like daily stuff. It's usually just kind of going over the, you know, what's happened in the news or just whatever. I don't really listen to those. But I like his Mad Lad stuff. Where is let's watch this. Let's just wrap things up with this. This would be a good way to kind of like see the stream out.
Who's there?
Sargon, long time no see.
Anita, my arch nemesis.
Oh, Sargon, are we really that different, you and I? We both fight the same villain. White Identity. You don't look so good, Carl. What's the matter?
I'm afraid that I'm not as smart as I think I am. That the white nationalists are chads and I'm a beta boy pussy.
Fear? Why, there's nothing to fear, Carl. The white nationalists have no hope. Theirs is but a dying order. Here, Carl, take these pills. Just one a day. It'll give you the power to destroy any man in a debate.
Oh yes! The individualism! It's growing in me! My powers! Yes! Yes!
So good. I play more, but I'm at risk of something bad happening in these shows. I might do like a Rumble stream later on. Not today, but like in the future. Where we can maybe do a bit more kind of edgy stuff. Do like a watch along to some of the old classic Murdoch stuff, you know, hang out in those. Because that means we can maybe, you know, we can, yeah, let loose, exactly. We can kind of watch some more spicy content. and do that. So I'll think about how to maybe get that going. I'm sure it's just as simple as what we do on YouTube. Because what I can maybe do in order to get folk to, because getting people to watch Rumble, because I don't really use it that much, I need to be posting the rest of my videos there soon. I can maybe do a stream half on YouTube, and I'll be like, right, listen, we're fucking off the Rumble. If you want the spicy shit, that would probably be the best way to get people into the Rumble stream. I'm just kind of spitballing here, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. But that was a fun stream. I enjoyed that. I think that kind of like review of debates, historic stuff, I'll like post in the Telegram if folk want to send me links to some of these older debates. Best of Nick Fuentes TikTok Zoom calls. That could be funny. Debate Gavin McInnes. That was a good debate actually. Remember this one? This was relatively new. Is this the one Gavin McInnes walked out on? Yes, it is. Gavin was like teaming up with this like Jewish guy, and then the Jewish guy was asked a question: who would you rather get rid of, the Catholics and the Muslims? And he said the Catholics. And then Gavin McInnes just walks off. I was like, Gavin McInnes is one of those guys. I really like Gavin McInnes. I think he's funny. Maybe he's got, a bit of Scottish blood in him as well. A bit of respect there. But him and I will never see eye to eye in terms of that specific question. But he's like the type of guy I would like to kind of chill out with, hang out. If you want to go out with someone for we're going to go out for like a drink and a meal. Oh, who are we going with? Or we're going with Gavin McInnes. That sounds like a good time, I have to admit. Where is he? He's still there.
Between Islam and Catholicism.
Oh, here we go.
They would choose to get rid of Catholicism, just like they would choose to get rid of white people and white nations and replace them with Muslims. Because they view, hold on a second here, just like they would happily replace white people with Muslims in white countries because they think that white people are a greater threat to them and to their survival than diverse populations full of Muslims.
Adam,
what's happening in London. It's just like Brett Stevens says. He says that a diverse...
Gavin, let's talk about it. Let's really talk about this issue. Gavin,
come on.
I have a
Don't
very
be like
strong...
that.
Listen,
don't
let me
abandon
speak.
me.
We were oppressed for 2,000 years.
To retrieving the lost artifacts of the Jewish people, which are held by the Vatican.
Yeah, I'm out.
I don't think. Let me ask you a question. Here's
Let's
a real
go.
question. Here's a real question about Catholicism.
I knew that question would be
good one, Vince. I appreciate it.
Good one. I was literally, if they asked that question 10 minutes in rather than 2 hours, 19 minutes in, we may have got to this point a bit faster.
So
I like it. I like he's got a camera facing into the studio as well, just in case a situation like this happens.
There he goes.
All right, whatever.
I like Ryan. He's a cool guy. He's on like Sam Hyde show now. I'm a big fan of him. He's good. Great impressions. Really good impressions.
I think he's joking.
You guys do whatever you want, but the truth is the Jewish people have been oppressed.
Oh, there we go. Guys, listen to how I'm going to rationalize my worldview. I was a victim in the past. Therefore, I'm in the right to be strong today and do what I want. The end. Yeah, fuck it. Let's wrap things up now. That was good fun. So, next time streaming, I'll maybe do, again, my kind of time frames like usually like a Wednesday to Saturday. So, I'll probably be following Wednesday. Again, the streams are always on my... Like, I don't unlist them. I try to make sure that they're actually available, so you want to go back, you can more than welcome to do so. For some background patter, as we say in Scotland. So, yeah, signing out. Thanks again, and until next time. Also, new video. I've got 2 great ideas. Going to be really good. I'm not sure what to focus on first, but I've got 2 ideas. 2 very distinct things, so I'm going to get to work. We've got some good videos coming.